Like it is. Looks like we're okay. And okay, whoever's calling me, please don't. I can't pick it up. Can you guys hear me okay? Let's just start with that. Can you guys hear me okay? Will somebody tell me if you can hear the audio? Not receiving enough data. Yes. Well, we're always going to get those error messages, and it's always going to look scary. So this is what naturally happens to David's hair if I don't actually comb it or try to straighten it out. Okay, you guys can hear me. I got lots of good comments here, and this is my view of what I'm seeing when you guys are talking. I get this little window right over here. I was like, "Hi, are you doing a meditation today?" Yeah, actually, right now. Right now, we're doing a meditation. So instead of calling, just watch the show. A long time, and I needed a lot of time off because I'm processing a divorce, as you probably know. It was not something that was easy to do. This has been a very intense process, and so 600 feet altitude, and we had snow come down and bury our internet antenna. So the antenna that makes this possible, that hopefully is not buffering too much. Oh, you're buffering a lot, huh? Yeah, it's lagging, buffering. Okay, it says excellent connection. We're seeing if it's going to buffer anymore now. This is the beauty of live streaming, folks. I have to wait like 30 seconds to, yeah, big time buffering. Okay, buffering. Okay, now is it good? Oh, people are saying it's good now. I just redid everything and it is, oh, it did. Okay, can you guys hear me now? Can you guys hear me now? Still buffering, huh? Jeez. Yeah, YouTube wouldn't let me do this. Good now? Good? Good now, good now, good now, good. Okay, everybody's saying good. Boom, stop buffering. Yes. Okay, wow, all right. There's some very, very insulting comments in there. So, look, I haven't cut my hair for a while. I'm sorry if this freaks you out. But you know what, folks? Look on the bright side. We're doing a global peace meditation, and I almost thought about doing the Zuckerberg look. You know, that would have been a little more intense, I think, than the hair that you're seeing right now. So I just want to make it clear that I have options. You know, it's a lifestyle choice. It's how I choose to identify. I might have different pronouns. You know, it's all dependent upon my form of expression, what makes me feel most comfortable and safe in this very, very chaotic environment. So anyway, I hope you're doing well. Looks like we're good now. So yeah, okay. I don't know how I managed to pull this off, but I chopped the resolution from 1440 down to 1080 live. I didn't even know if I could do that. Apparently I can. Oh, it says no data now. But then it says stream data excellent. Okay, so yeah. All right, well, it seems that the majority of people are happy with the hair, so I think that's just a vote for yes. We're not going to do anything crazy like cut it on live television. So I guess I've got a connection. Yeah, it's all saying excellent. Everything looks good. I might have electrified myself. Yeah, that's true. You know, people make such a big deal out of the head-banging hair. Ginny Blankenfeld, thank you. You look like $1 million, David. We love you and we miss you. Enough about David's hair. Let's focus on meditation. Dan Boskill. I agree. All right, we can do that. So welcome to my office. Here we are. You know, this is fun. We don't need to take everything so seriously and be so afraid. Obviously, the situation in the world is very tense. And if I have an excellent connection, which it looks like I do, let's see. I do look good with long hair. I just have to brush it once in a while. Well, we can, you know. I mean, look, it's supposed to be kind of curly. That's part of the objective. I think it's a different form of expression for a different time that we're in. So anyway, if you think about what's going on right now, it's incredibly frightening. It's incredibly terrifying. And it leads us to many different types of, oh, the stream is gone. Video stopped. Whoa. Let's see. Okay, I don't really know why all this is happening. I guess we're under very, very severe attack is probably what it is. Are you guys able to hear me? You stopped broadcasting. Yeah, I don't see it. It stopped for me, so I'm not sure what to do here. I think we're getting hacked, honestly. But we should have expected as much. We should have expected as much. Okay, a lot of people are saying it looks good, it looks fine, it's working. Okay, well, here's the good part. If it actually stops, I have a local recording that I'm making here. Let me look at that and make sure that's okay. And it is, it's definitely recording. So no matter what, if the YouTube thing craps out on me, I will re-upload this. Hopefully enough of you are able to see it. Yep, you're saying it's good. Thank you. So we're going to try to just keep moving and continue forward on this because, you know, there's a lot to talk about here. This is a time of times. This is something that is very, very intense. I, of course, have specialized in this concept of eschatology, E-S-C-H-A-T-O-L-O-G-Y. Eschatology is the science of studying the end of the world, okay? So that would make me an I don't want to say something profane. An eschatologist. Yeah, I'm an eschatologist, folks. I'm an eschatologist, yes. That's how we have to learn these words and say them just right, give them just the right amount of gas on the gas pedal, nuance it in so that all the subtext is thoroughly layered in place. So eschatology is telling us, hey, you know, there might not be continuity on Earth. There might be changes, and it might be very, very massive. And in fact, getting back to the slide now, I love being able to do all this right on the desk. Let's see, boom. Is the world about to be destroyed? Well, we are on schedule for when everybody expected that it would. That's the problem, folks. That's one of the biggest issues that we're facing here is the fact that it appears that this is where it's going. So a lot of prophecies said that, right? That's one of the problems. So it all tends to focus back on this concept of the 25,920 year cycle known as the precession of the equinoxes. And just check and see if you guys, okay, some of you can hear me, some of you can't. So it's a very, very strange, obviously this is a sophisticated hack. This is not something I could do myself, but we will have the re-upload. So If you can't watch me, we did have somebody say that they were able to go back to the original link. So here's one of the things you might want to do, folks. Try to close your browser. If you're having any problems with this broadcast, try closing your browser, get completely out of it, and then go back in the way you came before, either from the link that you had in your email or click in through your browser. And if you've had trouble and it's intermittent, that might help you get back in. That's just one of the things that people are saying gave them some results. So yeah, eschatology, the study of the end of the world, it all revolves around this one interesting thing, this 25,000 year precession of the equinoxes. And as you probably know, now that's very rude. Get on with it, my God. JSTS 327. Yeah, shame on you, really. Honestly, whatever. So the master cycle of ascension, and I didn't really know what this actually meant at the time. I wasn't really clear about, what is the 25,000 year cycle supposed to be doing for us? But one of the things that we do know is that 35 different ancient spiritual traditions all encoded this numerical cycle. It's a fascinating study, honestly, because we don't really know how something of this magnitude could have been spread all over the planet, where all these different cultures around the world encoded very similar data about such an obscure thing as this weird drifting of the Earth's axis. So it appears to be 25,000 years in length, regardless of which planet. This is one of the things that we hear in the so-called Law of One series, which has been a major part of my work for a long time. I found it in January 1996, and it was said to be a series of revealed teachings, meaning that someone actually brought it in telepathically, and the alleged author of the content was a higher intelligence. And what's interesting about this is that the higher intelligence said that they were here to build the Great Pyramid as a symbol for the coming Christ, which at that point would have been still something like 8,000 years away. But they wanted to create this edifice for the coming Christ, and there are many, many amazing numerological clues in the construction of the Great Pyramid, in the, for example, the open coffer, the granite sarcophagus, has the same dimensions as the Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament, and yet the Ark of the Covenant's measurements are described in the Old Testament, which is before the Great Pyramid had anyone theoretically go into the king's chamber and find the granite sarcophagus. That didn't happen until the 1500s or something with Caliph al-Mamun. Or no, it might have been older than that. It might have been, there's a couple different periods where the pyramid had things happening around it, but I think it's the 1400s, yeah, before they were able to actually get in there and find this granite sarcophagus. And then, wow, the measurements of the sarcophagus are identical to those of the Ark of the Covenant in the Bible. And then that adds to even stranger questions, which is, why would the person who made the pyramid, 7,000 years before the Old Testament or more, know the dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant? Or how did the person who gave the dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant, or entity, if it's supposed to be Yahweh, God, how did Yahweh know this, and how did Yahweh give the same dimensions that were in the pyramid? And that's just one. I mean, there's so many. For example, Jesus in the Bible talks about a 153 number. The number actually appears in an enigmatic metaphor of the net, and there's fish in the net. Are you guys hearing me okay? Okay, looks right. Okay, so you guys are comprehending this. That's good. Want to make sure that we're still live and everything's working. So the 153 number, the 153 fishes in Jesus' net, is believed to be a metaphor about "Go ye therefore and be a fisher of men." And therefore the number 153 represents that culmination that you have as a soul, where you are now ready to go out there and perform missions of spiritual healing and service, which is what beings like Jesus wanted us to be inspired to do, I believe. They don't want us to just worship them. They want us to embody them. They want us to become like them. They want us to take on their characteristics as much as possible and go out there and be of service. And so when we see the Great Pyramid having the number 153 encoded in it in a very striking way, and what do I mean by that? I mean that the 153rd course of stone up from the bottom is exactly where the king's chamber is. And the king's chamber is where that granite sarcophagus is, that is exactly the same dimensions as the Ark of the Covenant. So does that mean anything? Is that a numerological coincidence? Well, probably not. And it's also the widest course of all the stones in the pyramid. And there's many, many others. For example, if you actually take the pyramid and you draw a line through it, where you take, this would be your latitude line, okay, going west to east, and then you draw a line that comes up off of that latitude. Let's see if I can make this look right. Draw a line that comes up off of that latitude line, and it goes, actually it would have to be this way because I'm on camera, right? It looks right for me. But what you have is with the straight line like this, and then it goes this way, that this line is this angle that you have in between these two right here. The angle that this creates is let's say it's the angle of the slope in the pyramid, okay? So if you take the west to east line and you draw the slope angle line off of the pyramid, the same angle that the pyramid's internal passages as you go up towards the king's chamber, that same angle, you use that angle, and I forget what it is, it's 23.6 degrees or something like that. But anyway, if you use that line, it actually crosses directly through Jerusalem. It goes into Bethlehem, it goes into Jerusalem, and it crosses the River Jordan. So it's very incredible. And that's another way in which it appears that the Great Pyramid was encoded. One of the coolest ones is that when the pyramid was first built, it had white polished mirror-looking stone on the outside. Unbelievable. It actually looked like a marble sculpture sitting there in the desert. It did not look like it does now. It was totally sharp edges. Very clean. Very, very artificial looking. Clearly not from Earth. And again, this was, according to the Law of One, this was originally given to us as this amazing gift to get us ready for the coming of Christ, which in the Law of One is very specifically defined. And I'll get to what that is in a minute. But before we do, again, the pyramid was covered with gleaming white stone. You could see nothing but sunlight reflecting off of it during the day. It was like a mirror-polished object, literally. And you can still see some of those casing stones along the bottom. And in fact, the areas between the stones are melted together with a cement that's harder than steel. And the cracks between those stones are less than 1/1000th of an inch, which is better than the tiles on the space shuttle. So even right now in my aerospace company, we are looking at a very, very fascinating technology called nanoconcrete. And I hope I'm not, I don't think I'm giving out anything that's too violating any security, but one of the technologies that has come up that has been made by a private inventor that someone on our board has access to is a technology where the main thing we need now to make concrete is sand. You can still use larger particles, you can still use pieces of gravel, whatever, but you don't need them. And there is a substrate material that we're putting in that's based on graphene, and this allows us to make something called nanoconcrete. And nanoconcrete only requires sand, and what we can do with it is we can make material. Even right now, the crush pressure that we have on this nanoconcrete is 24,000 pounds per square inch, folks. Now, traditional concrete, I believe, is 2,400 or maybe like around 3,000, depending on the concrete. But this is why you need rebar. And so up to 50% or more of your expense in building something is going to be putting steel in place to hold up the building with the concrete, because the concrete is too weak. So we now have a technology where we can get rid of the steel rebar. And even in this generation, we're at 24,000 pounds per square inch. And there's another iteration that we can do, a new version of the machine. It's going to we need a large investment to do this. It's like $100 million. But once we have that, We can do 45,000 pounds per square inch, folks. So that literally what I'm saying is you can 3D print with nanoconcrete. You can 3D print a pyramid just like the Great Pyramid. You could do it any way you want. So all of these mysteries that we can't explain of like, how do you get these darn stones to fit together 1/1000th of an inch apart? Well, the answer is 3D printing. And one of the things that shows that the pyramid was 3D printed is that the blocks have pieces of human hair stuck inside of them and insect bodies and things like this, stuff that shouldn't have been there if it had been, rock that was quarried from under the earth. Instead, we have blocks of stone that are poured in place through a 3D printing process, and apparently we've rediscovered something like that now. So why am I so excited about this? Because if you have concrete that's going to go at 45,000 pounds per square inch, you could build a gigantic tulip building. You could build buildings that look like anything you want. They're so strong that you could do really fun, exotic, great, crazy, wonderful, creative stuff that would have never before been possible. And so the nanoconcrete, the fact that this has now come to me and that we might be able to use this now, I mean, we could build a nanoconcrete pyramid. I don't know, there might be good reasons to do that. But one of the things that we're actually looking at as a project is a series of underground homes made out of nanoconcrete, because among other things, this material is completely able to shield radiation. So that if there was a nuclear war, and if you wanted to be living in our underground base, we're going to build it, okay? We probably will end up doing that for the customers who would like that kind of facility, and we're going to do it where you have a place, but you're inside a larger facility. So we would do it similar to stories we've heard about where there would be a great big common area as well as individual living quarters. So I just want to point out that we're now maybe getting the technology that could have built the Great Pyramid, but somebody had the ability 12,000 years ago, is what it looks like, to have done this through something like nanoconcrete 3D printing. And making sure that you guys can still hear me. Okay, great. Looks like you can. So everything says excellent, excellent, excellent. This is awesome. Okay, should I freshen it up a little bit, get myself a different camera angle? Let's see. How about this one? Okay, so to talk about this concept of the law of one again for a little while, the beings said that the galactic consciousness was going to embody here on Earth, and that's what they call the Logos. So sure enough, in the New Testament, Jesus says, I am the Logos, and the way that it's usually translated is, I am the Word. But the word word means Logos. So in the law of one, we have a very interesting take on that, where the galactic mind embodied in a human being, the one perfect human being we've had, and that's Jesus. And so the law of one is very Christian. And they had to have the Bible open to do it, and they prayed to the archangels before they started. They had a very specific prayer where they brought in Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, and Archangel Ariel. And I'm probably not saying it in the right order, but that was a mandatory part of the beginning, as was the Bible being open. The woman who brought it in, Carla, was a dedicated Christian. She had, went to church, sang in choir. I mean, it's a very interesting concept, because a lot of people think that God stopped talking, that it all stopped 2,000 years ago, or if you're Islamic, it stopped 1,500 years ago. Well, I wouldn't want to limit the intelligence of a creator that has given us so much of an abundant universe with so many stars, so many galaxies, so many planets beyond description. We have 40 billion Earth-like planets just in our galaxy alone, according to NASA. And so if that's really true, then when does it stop? The answer is, we're probably not the only civilization that's intelligent. It's probably not the only time that this has happened, and it's really, really ridiculous. And then it would be even more ridiculous to think that nobody knows that we exist, right? If you got 40 billion planets, then it's very, very silly to think that we don't exist. So, well, the Bible says, God made man in his own image. Well, this is awesome, because if the Logos is Jesus, if Jesus is the galaxy, then that means that there's human populations all over the galaxy, and they're all essentially in the Christ consciousness, or they will have to go through that Christ awakening at some point. In the Law of One, they talk very specifically about that our galaxy has a pattern of what they call archetypes. And these are mandatory lessons. Not like other mandates that maybe could get turned over. These mandates, you can't ever turn them over. And these are karmic mandates. These are things that you absolutely have to do in the universe. And so there are certain lessons the Law of One says you absolutely have to learn. And when you combine all those lessons together, all the different lessons together is a story, okay? And it's a story about a hero. So it's the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is a story about a person. Let's see if I got to stay in focus. This is crazy. The focus is so delicate here, folks. Right there. Oh, right there. Yeah, okay. Now my nose is out of focus, but my eyes are in focus. So that works. All right. It's really literally that sensitive. It's so crazy. So what in the world was I talking about now? Oh my God. All right. Somebody tell me what we were just talking about. Somebody said happy birthday. Well, oh yeah, if we were in his image and call us by our name. Okay, right. God made man in his own image. So as a result, we are all logoi, and so the Law of One calls us sub-logoi, meaning that we're all essentially co-creators with the one infinite creator, but we're not separate from it. So you can't separate yourself from the true identity that you have. You can't separate yourself from this galactic mind that you are. And one of the very fascinating things I discovered was in talking to my top insider of all time, Dr. Pete Peterson, who worked directly with the Reagan administration. They called him Dr. Do. They considered him the #1 expert on advanced technology. His grandfather was Tesla's lab assistant. He learned all the Tesla secrets. He was the man. And so Pete Peterson got to go to some very cool places where you get to meet extraterrestrials. And this is one of the things that I've actually had many, many different people tell me as I've been doing this work over the years, as many of you probably know. We're living in a very, very different world than we think. The situation is incredibly different than we think because there are higher beings who, their job, if you will, let's move over here a little bit, frame myself up a little more. There are higher beings where their job, if you will, is to make sure that we are guarded and protected, but they cannot expose themselves to us either unless we as a collective society, as a civilization, respect them, understand that they exist, and want them to arrive. They have these prime directive type of axioms that they can't get around. There's laws in the universe because the universe is conscious. So when the universe is a conscious being, the universe sets boundaries, and those boundaries must be followed, and there is no way around it. Karma is one of the main boundary that the universe sets with us, according to the Law of One, and it says that we all are subject to paying off the things that we do that cause other people to feel any type of harm or negativity or distress or sadness, pain, fear. We are obligated to re-experience what we cause others to feel in our own lives. I mean, this is just the way it works. We have to do this. And so if we take that approach, we can see that karma is universal. And so anybody who doesn't think that they're subject to karma is woefully mistaken. And the Law of One talks about how ignorant they feel that we are in general, and they say most of your peoples exist in what we would call a perpetual state of childhood. And I would argue the main reason for this state of childhood is that we fail to grasp the cause and effect relationship between what we think and how we treat other people and the experiences that then result. I mean, there are glimmerings of it. We say, oh, I had bad luck. Right? But it's a lot more than bad luck. It's actually a balancing effect. And so the Law of One, for me, I know that it seems like I'm just sharing my opinion on some random irrelevant text, but the reason why it caught my attention was that it was so stunningly incredible in terms of how it put together other pieces of alternative science that I'd been looking at for many years. And so I did write a book in the last year or so, Awakening in the Dream. And a lot of you probably have already read that. If you haven't, I would highly, highly recommend that you do. I think it is my best out of all four in terms of its readability and its overall, the grade of the spirituality of the book, I think, is the highest of all of them in terms of what the Law of One would want. But the point is that I had done a lot of independent study, a lot of personal research and reflection. And when I found the Law of One, it had hundreds of pieces of data that correlated with discrete scientific things that I had found that I could measure. I could say, this appears to be true, this appears to be true. And so I put it all together and had a model in my mind that I thought was really, really great, and I thought I was a genius and I'm going to change the world. And then I read the Law of One and I just start laughing, because here's a source that's gone vastly beyond my level of ability to process this scientific model. I had to take the data in, but then find out, okay, well, is this true? So for example, they talk about the idea that DNA itself can be transformed at the molecular level. Well, I found in the year 2000 this work that came out by two German researchers, Fossar and Bludorf, talking about a scientist in Russia named Dr. Peter Garyaev, where he had shined laser light through salamander eggs laid by a salamander, and then took that salamander laser light and shined it into a frog egg, and the frog egg metamorphosed into a salamander, and it grew up to be an adult salamander, and it could breed with other adult salamanders, and in essence, the frog's genetic material was completely transformed into a salamander. There was no remnant of it having come from a frog. That's a much more exciting way to view biology than anything that we normally see in the Western world today. And this is also why I'm not buying the massive die-off argument either, frankly, because there are technologies that I'm aware of, that I've written about in my books. If you build the pyramids, you get some of these same effects. There's absolutely stunning healings. Let's talk about that. Stunning healings from pyramid power. After the fall of the Russian Soviet Union in 1991, it balkanized into a series of republics, but what happened was that the college professors were still getting their Soviet Union pay for being members of the military-industrial complex and doing scientific research. But now there was nothing for them to research, and so they still got, under communism, their guaranteed money. So they were able to fund, thanks to Dr. Alexander Golod predominantly, they were able to fund a series of pyramids. Now these pyramids, from their research, had energetic effects on matter and energetic effects on biological life. And we're talking very, very stunning energetic effects. Okay, so the pyramid power is nothing at all to laugh at. Where can I go here? Let's see. That one, how about, oh, that's a really close up. I don't want to do that yet. That's very intimate, folks. Okay, number two. Let's go back to number two. So, okay, so the Law of One is talking about these principles that apply to many different categories, and one of the categories that it applies to, again, the law of free will, the concept that the Creator has designed this universe as a feedback mechanism. And as you go through your life, you start experiencing this non-local causation between things that you're thinking and things that happen to you in response. So we are here to experience spiritual growth, and there are beings here who are guiding us through that, and they have never left. It's an illusion to think that we are alone in the universe. It's really, really silly when you can even see what they were doing right before. And so these beings were here, and they built, probably with 3D printing, gigantic pyramids. And so when you go to Russia and you find these pyramids out in the field that Dr. Alexander Gilad has built, they actually had to build a steep angle pyramid more like this angle, as opposed to the Great Pyramid, which is what that's so crazy, more like that. So these were 144 feet tall in some cases, made out of PVC plastic pipes and then fiberglass sheets on the outside. And they did not use metal. This is a very, very important thing. If you put metal in the pyramid, it doesn't work anymore. The metal somehow absorbs this effect that's caused, but very strange things started to happen. For example, they had cancer where they would inject mice with carcinogens, and the control group, 70% would die, and even in the highest degree of toxicity, only 30% would die if the mouse itself is put in the pyramid. 70% to 30%. Okay, so there was a very amazing experiment that Geryaev later did, where he actually shined a laser beam through the spleen and pancreas of a deceased rat. That they kept the spleen and pancreas on life support, and then they took that pancreatic laser light and shined it into the body of a rat who had been given diabetes with a toxin called alloxan, which destroys its pancreas. Now, when your pancreas is destroyed, you develop diabetes, your blood sugar skyrockets, and that's how you can tell when somebody's about to die, is that their blood sugar just goes through the roof, and this ultimately chokes out the oxygen, and you die of asphyxiation, really. So in this experiment, Geryaev injected the mice with the toxin that's going to kill them from diabetes, and he waited the amount of time until they were within 24 hours of dying based on their blood sugar levels. So he waits till the blood sugar levels skyrocket. It took about 7 days. Then he surgically injects the fiber optic cable. He cuts a little tiny hole, and he shines that pancreas light from another rat's pancreas into the area of the body where the pancreas would be. Because when you develop diabetes, your pancreas is destroyed. That's why your blood sugar goes up, your pancreas is needed to fight the blood sugar levels and keep the blood sugar back down. The rat didn't even have a pancreas. He autopsied other rats from the same period of time, and their pancreas had dissolved inside the body. It literally had dissolved, okay? Now, if he shines the pancreas light into the area where the pancreas was, but it no longer exists, with 24 hours to live, literally within the last day of life, these rats spontaneously restored their health. Okay, this is unbelievable that this actually happened, but it did. And it was proven on many, many different levels. So here's another example. They took a sugar solution, a glucose solution, and they stored it inside the pyramid. They didn't even, in this case, bring the subject into the pyramid. They just took a solution of glucose sugar water, stored it inside the pyramid, and then began giving it to babies who had been born in the obstetrics and gynecology unit prematurely. The babies are sure to die. They've been written off. There's nothing you can do for them. They're preemies. They're goners. They're done. It's very sad. Everybody's crying. Hey, do you want to, your baby's going to die anyway. What do you say? I'm so sorry. And everybody's crying. It's just horrible, right? Will you let us give your baby this water that we put in the pyramid? Yeah, okay. And every single time they gave a baby pyramid water that was premature and was sure to die, it lived. Every single baby lived that they gave this to. Now, that's unbelievable. Then they said, well, is it the glucose? What happens if we take out the glucose? And so they did that, and they did the experiment with water, just nothing but actual water that had been stored in the pyramid, and the baby still got better with nothing but water. So they found out that they could get rid of cancer, diabetes, basically any type of ailments that people have, any type of issues, health-related complications. It seems to be intelligent, and it seems to fix it on its own. So we in the Western world have been operating on this paradigm of health that says that health is the result of certain factors that we can quantify. Things like, the level of oxygen intake obviously is very important, the level of nutrition, vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, getting enough exercise. Okay, these are things that are all commonly agreed upon as keys to longevity. The Russian research and many other branches of research that fall under various names suggests that there is also an energetic component to health. And some of the early Russian research that I was reading, which unfortunately I haven't been able to relocate, but I went on a Russian physics binge in the late 1990s, and I have 9 feet worth of books that I printed out online. And a good part of the first part of that whole thing is Russian physics, because once the Soviet Union collapsed, they translated this stuff into English, or sometimes I had to use translation software. It wasn't always easy to make sense out of it, but a lot of really amazing papers came out regarding subjects that still would be considered classified to the United States as well, frankly. And so Russian physics is stunning. It's got lots and lots of depth, and it implies that the universe is made of living energy that is conscious and aware. In fact, that's the only conclusion that adequately compensates the data that we get in hand. We don't have any other way of justifying how this data could appear. We don't know how is it possible that storing water in a pyramid is going to make a baby get better when a baby would have died. Well, if you want to get technical about it, it appears that all matter has to have some sort of energy that flows into it to make it exist. And so the Earth itself has a flow of energy flowing into it to make sure that the Earth exists. And this is what we call gravity. Gravity would be the equivalent of something breathing into the Earth to allow all those atoms to exist. And so if that's a larger source of a downward current that wants to push down, because it's all flowing inside the Earth, then we, being smaller than the Earth, we get caught up in that current and it pushes us down onto the surface. Well, so this is a very interesting view of gravity that's entirely different, because we normally call it the pull of gravity. We think that it's pulling us down. But nobody's ever come up with a really good analytical model for that. And the closest thing to any workable model of gravity that is commonly accepted by physicists is Einstein's model, in which the curvature of space-time is modeled as if it was a rubber sheet. And of course, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because if you have a planet in the middle of a rubber sheet, it's still only going to roll to the South Pole, not the whole planet. So then what you have to do is you have to three-dimensionalize the process of everything flowing into the planet. And the way you would do this is the same way if you had a straw that's got, and you're in a room where there's very high air pressure, and the only way that air can get out is to go through the hole in the straw. Well, it's going to be flowing, the air is going to be flowing into that hole from all directions at the same time. Just like this air of gravity is flowing into the Earth from all directions at the same time, but locally it's always going to be going down. So that's a very fascinating concept, and the idea that gravity, of course, sticks to matter as it goes along because it's pushing on us, right? Gravity is sticky. It has a stickiness to matter. Well, what if in addition to gravity being sticky, that it also spins? What if there's a little bit of a spin on it as it's going into the Earth? Well, the answer is there definitely is. It's called the Coriolis effect. It causes cannonballs to bend when you fire them, which was horrible for people trying to fight wars back in those days. But as a result of the spin factors and all these things, a physical object can become an attractor. A physical object, based on its shape, can cause energy to occur. It can generate energy. And so the pyramid shape actually acts as a funnel where this fluid-like swirling energy is coming in from the bottom, it swirls around inside, and it creates fire in the middle, or pyramid. The word pyramid means fire in the middle. That's the etymology of the word. So the pyramid is a fascinating, fascinating subject because, of course, the pyramid is something that we're all seeing all over the world. They show up on all these different continents, and they now have been proven by the Russians to have this overwhelmingly amazing healing effect that completely eliminates the need for expensive treatment. I mean, obviously surgical type of things if you have to do something like that. But then again, if we can grow a pancreas just by energy, like in Gary Ives' experiment, because again, after the rat restored its health, the pancreas was perfect. It had grown back. The rat grew back its own pancreas through nothing but this light. And so I'm hearing people saying, "Oh my God, you know, I can't say that, right? The organs are all going to be shredded up, and there's no hope. There's nothing we can do. The people who do this, they're going to be sterilized. They're going to be this. I don't know. There's a lot of technology that's been hidden by the Russians and the U.S. that I think we're going to get to know a lot more about as time goes on. And we don't know about it right now, but I'm sharing some of it with you, and I don't necessarily believe that we are incapable of keeping any human body from dying. I think there's just about anything that we're going to be able to do once we get this technology, because the stuff that the Russians discovered with the pyramids apparently pales in comparison to, if you will, extraterrestrial technology, such as the concept of med beds. These are apparently beds that you can lie down on, and even if you've had something like a gunshot wound, in a matter of hours of lying on this bed, the advanced version of energetics that it uses, it essentially like 3D prints your body back together using some sort of energy. So it's kind of like the Russian physics concept of the regrowing of the pancreas, and it somehow uses pulsed modulated lasers, and I think there's a holographic component to it, because there's also Budakovsky. Let me talk about him real quick. In the Budakovsky science, he takes a raspberry plant. Okay, it still says excellent, good. So he takes a raspberry plant and he shines a laser through it and captures that laser into a hologram. And so now he's got a holographic picture of a raspberry that he can play back. And the raspberry hologram is played into a tumor on a raspberry branch. So you have a raspberry that has a cancer tumor, right? And it looks big, brown, ugly thing. You shine the holographic raspberry light into the tumor, and the tumor cells automatically rearrange themselves back into healthy raspberry cells, and the cancer just disappears. So we normally believe that if you have a tumor, you have to cut the thing out. There's no other recourse. And if you don't have an organ and you want and you need one, you can't grow one. You can't grow your own pancreas, right? That's not anything you've heard. Well, this is what they were showing. So it's very, very fascinating. And it also, again, indicates that if you had something like a med bed, my speculation as to what we'll need to do to make something like this work is just like in Budakovsky's case, where you have holographic raspberry light. That's got the DNA codes of the holographic raspberry in it. So the raspberry itself, when you make a hologram, it's a full 3D portrait, and that would include pictures of its DNA. So you don't need to sacrifice a being, like in the case of the rat experiment with the pancreas, in order to make this work. You can do it with just holograms. So imagine if you had a bed, and let's say you've had a gunshot wound, and this has a series of triangulating lasers that can zero right in on where the wound is, and then beam in the holographic equivalent of human cellular energy that your body expects to see in that area. Then, apparently based on some other Russian science, you can also add material that is not part of the regular human body and then transform that material into material that is bioavailable. So, for example, this is fascinating. And again, I assume no legal liability. This is totally, it's just anecdotal, and I'm not recommending that you do this, but there are anecdotes, which I've also practiced myself, a classic Russian tradition where when you burn yourself, oh, well, aloe vera, right? No, don't do the aloe vera. Don't. Do the egg white. No, what, egg white? Just trust me. And again, no legal liability, but if you want to, I would recommend you might want to try putting egg white on your burn the next time you get burned. So all you do is you pop a hole through the top of the egg. You can still use it. You can still cook it for breakfast. Just poke a little hole through the very top, and then take that and just literally dab it on the burn here and just get it coated. And according to the Russian physics theory, there are stem cells in the chicken egg white that your body can holographically rewrite using the same process I was describing with the raspberry, with the pyramid effect, with the babies growing, back from near death. You can get this kind of an effect to happen. So it's a very, very exciting new chapter in our science that we could have these med beds where we're shooting lasers into the body and then adding in a material like the egg white. Because if you put the egg white on the burn, my experience has been that my burns don't leave any scars. They don't hurt as long. They don't, it appears like everything's fine. And the Russian explanation again is that your body uses those stem cells. So maybe the medbed thing also would involve putting some kind of aggregate material on the body that has stem cells in it that your body can then transform for its own use with the help of the laser. So please don't despair and think that just because we're going through this very strange situation that anybody who might have had something done, or maybe they didn't even have a choice, maybe it was done against their will, that they're just toast. That, oh, we're going to lose $1 billion. I really, really don't think so, because I know that this technology will not be able to stay classified for very much longer. In fact, we're doing our best to try to get it out there now, but you can imagine the type of opposition that would have existed to the underlying profit models of various big businesses if you start to have such an effective treatment modality that requires no money, right? It doesn't require money. It's very, very cheap to store water in the Great Pyramid or another pyramid that you could make. And then again, we don't really need to build pyramids according to some of the research that's apparently out there. You're going to do just fine without the pyramids. You'll be able to have lots of other technology. So anyway, I've already been talking for an hour. What happened? Okay, what happened to the hover car project? We are doing the hover car project. So if you've been wondering where I am, believe me, I'm very busy. I'm up at 8,600 feet here fighting snowfall. It's falling right now. In fact, the reason why I wanted to get this out is that we needed to do this today. Maybe part of the reason why I had connection problems is that the snow is falling, because normally I should be able to do the higher speed one no problem, but we don't even have 1 inch of accumulation. The ground's just a little wet right now. But we're in a very serious situation in the world. And my opinion is obviously informed by sources that are different than where most other commentators are getting their information. And I say that on multiple levels. Number one, I have a proven track record of being on camera interviewing people with high-level security clearance for the U.S. and other militaries. And when you talk to these people and they find out that they can trust you, you are able to learn, if you're lucky enough, about a secret world that has been here at least for the last 100 years. Every president of the U.S. for the last 100 years has met extraterrestrials, according to various insider briefings that I've been given. If you don't think the government can keep something secret, go back and look at the Manhattan Project, which employed northwards of 130, 140,000 people, had multiple facilities, and no one leaked a word about the whole thing until it actually was used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And there were even people who had Geiger counters, and they were just told, when people come out of the building, wave this over them, and however much it's clicking, write down the number, and that's their score. And if they click too much and you got to send them over here, these people had no idea that it was radioactive. They had no idea that it was dangerous. They were just told, hold this thing, and if it clicks, send them this way, and if it doesn't click, send them that way, and write down the number of how much it's clicking. So believe me, the government can keep a secret. They can keep a secret, okay? And so in the case of this forbidden technology, it's not just technology. It's the fact that these entities exist and they are real. They built pyramids and they didn't leave. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work building pyramids. Why would you want to take off? Apparently, if you have the technology to go about a mile down below the surface of the earth, that's where almost all across the earth, apparently, it's like bubble wrap. There's these huge underground caverns that are 20 to 40 miles wide. And for some weird reason that again suggests divine intelligence and higher intervention, the caves have a natural glow in them. They are bioluminescent. They have a bioluminescent ceiling. And typically, if you find one that's never been opened up, it's going to have these white creatures that look like the creatures that survive in zero-light conditions in the Mariana Trench at the bottom of the deepest ocean on Earth. Okay, that's what you typically see inside these things, but many, many different extraterrestrial civilizations have accessed these little pockets, and they have the technology to make it a mile down below the surface and get in there. And once you get in there, there's liquid water inside the Earth, so you have a water source that's fresh, drinkable water. You can terraform it. You can make it into a city. You can have trees. You can have streams. You can have lakes. You can bring in animals, birds, all the life that you're used to seeing on the surface. And apparently, a number of different extraterrestrial civilizations are here now, and they're already living inside the Earth. And this is one of the reasons why we're never going to have a real nuclear war. There's too many other groups here who are more advanced than us, and their karma doesn't authorize them being destroyed in an inferno. So they get to have the right, by law, to stop nuclear war. And there's so much evidence that this is the way things really work. There's so many cases of UFOs appearing over nuclear missile installations, powering them down, rendering everything radioactively inert, and then all the lights come back on and it's fine. So it's not an act of war. They're not telling us it's not like an invasion, but they're saying we don't want you to use this. We don't want you to kill people with this. And so right now on Earth, there's certainly a lot of speculation, fear-mongering about the possibility of some kind of nuclear exchange that could happen. And I say, look, I don't see that because it's against the law. And there's too many other people who live here who won't let us do that. So you can write that one off. There's not going to be a nuclear war. I think that's a very safe assumption that we can make. There is not going to be a nuclear war. But what are some of the things that we're going to see? Well, we've already seen it. This is a very interesting rabbit hole to go down, and I'm already at the 1 hour mark, and I want to have... David isn't Illuminati, he's just taking your money. If you think that the only reason I do this is to make money, that is probably one of the silliest things I've ever heard in my life. If I wanted to make money, I would just do the aerospace stuff, and I sure as heck wouldn't put myself on camera and take risks with my life to talk about things where there are many, many, many people who want you dead to say these things, okay? I don't need to worry about money most likely as the company moves forward, but that could take years. We don't really know. I have said this before. If I am able to generate money in other ways, I don't want to charge for this work beyond what would probably be a minimal fee for a subscriber site, and that's it. And the reason I say that is that if you don't have some kind of fee and if you don't have some kind of subscription, you're subject to takedown. And the subscriber fee also allows us to be able to have the business make enough to run itself. In other words, you want that business to be able to earn enough that it at least pays its employees and can keep going. But my goal is to not require you to pay me anything other than, again, something like Netflix, some basic fee. But in the meantime, and again, my goal really is to see the whole world get off of the money cycle, because the technology that we have the opportunity to develop here eliminates a lot of the need for things that we thought we needed. Think about this. If you no longer need to pay for your electric bills and your car gas and all this kind of stuff, if all fuel is taken out of the equation, that's probably 70 to 80% of your expenses right there, okay? Now let's say that we've got various types of new building materials, 3D printing techniques, nanoconcretes, and then there's even other stuff we can do to make. You can make a whole house out of nanoconcrete. You can make the siding out of papercrete, which is a thinner type of material. You can print it in different capacities. So we're going to have the ability to build houses that are safer, that are much more affordable to build, and then you don't ever have bills. You might, what are your bills normally going to be? You have some utility bills, you have telecommunications, you have your food bill, obviously, but again, one of the biggest things you're paying for is energy, which requires you to have a job as an adult or be with someone else who's earning an income, or that you were independently wealthy for some reason. Okay, somebody just sent me a very strange thing by text. Looks like some kind of hash code or something. I don't know what that's about, but that's one of my insiders. So anyway, where was I? That was a little bit distracting. So when we look at 3D printing as a practical solution for many of our problems, and then I also want to point this out, folks. We have, when we're going to make these hover cars, we have a 3D printing technology that we're going to use for the chassis. So that means that you can build the chassis all in one piece. You have the fiber optic cables that it needs already inside the thing, and it's virtually indestructible based on the material that we make. So you really never have to worry about it breaking or like having a car crash and, oh, well, this part of the chassis has been damaged. The material is so strong that you would have to have a crash that is just way more than a fatality. Chicken soup inside is all that's left, or the equivalent thereof for the human body. That type of crash, then maybe you could damage your fiber optics inside, but it's not going to crash. It's not. We have flight control systems that are going to make it so that the danger factor of using transportation is going to go down quite dramatically. So yes, we are working on that, and we have had progress. We're still raising money. We still haven't gotten the money that we need, but we're chasing that goal, and we're getting closer and closer, and I think we're very close at this point. So let's just, again, keep us in your prayers, but this is a Patriot-owned, grassroots, non-swamp, non-deep state company. We are doing this because I don't think it might happen if we don't do it this way. I mean, I'd love it, frankly, if something just pops up and there are arrest tribunals and really interesting things going down, and in the midst of that process, lo and behold, we find out that they're going to give us spaceships now. But all I see as a fact is that the Department of Defense and the DIA declassified these documents that teach us how to build the craft. It doesn't say whether it would even work, although there are certain things in the proceedings that indicate that it should work. But it gives us an opportunity to look at it and see, what we could achieve. So the hover car project, they're going to be 3D printed. The fiber optics are going to be inside the chassis, and it's going to use these power plants that do not require fuel. That means that it's a continuous source of energy generation. And if you think that's impossible, then you don't understand that gravity could be tapped just like a water wheel. In much the same way that you would tap solar energy with solar panels, or you would create a hydroelectric plant by spinning a water wheel, which then turns an electric generator, it turns out that you can tap gravity directly and transform it into electromagnetic energy. And interestingly enough, it turns out that the Earth naturally does this on its own, with these bubbles that we call ball lightning. So in the Russian physics, such as the work of Terlecki, the Terlecki work says that gravity and spin pair with electrical and magnetic. So you have electromagnetic and gravity spin, or gravi-spin, and he says they pair. So that means that in the bubble, in the ball lightning, the gravity is transforming into a visible electromagnetic energy, which is the light that comes off of the ball. So we're going to actually do a movie about this. It's called Levitation. I'm very excited to report this. We have a deal that is just about finished. I probably shouldn't announce. Let me not announce the studio yet until we have a deal. But it's very exciting, and we're going to put a lot more production value into this than we ever have before, because I think it's really time that we start talking about these natural bubbles of energy and how they're formed, because in my latest course I just did, The Disclosure, we talked about the work of Kenneth Shoulders, which appears to be where these Navy patents came from. Kenneth Shoulders was the father of zero-point energy. He's apparently the guy who came up with that whole concept to begin with. And in the 1990s, he discovered that he could take energy and shoot it down the tip of a needle and create these balls of light that would repel gravity. And interestingly enough, one of Kenneth Shoulders' theories is that regular static electricity can do this. And so I've noticed since hearing this, and obviously being up here in a very, very dry climate, when you go into a high altitude like this, it becomes incredibly dry. In fact, I'm going to take a drink of water right now. The static electricity, when I touch a doorknob or something, I feel a push on my finger. I feel the gravity. And so this was one of Kenneth Shoulders' things is, hey, you can feel the anti-gravity effect that he's generating. It just turns out that normally in the static electricity hit, you only feel it once, whereas if you start emitting them out of an emitter, then you get a lot more, and now you can start to create a much greater gravitational thrust. So the craft that the Navy declassified is essentially like a peanut. And in a peanut, you have the nut inside the shell, and there's a hollow space in between. This is basically what you do with your craft. You create a hollow space. It's not entirely hollow. It has something in it called a bandpass material that allows certain bandwidths to pass through it. But you create this space in which you can have all these needles, and you generate this material called cold plasma, and then you can direct the plasma, and it allows you to have vertical takeoff and landing. And it's based upon the most dirt-simple physics principle, which again goes back to this concept of ball lightning. So again, the ball lightning thing, this is an explanation. One of the things we're going to talk about in the film is how fish fall out of the sky or frogs fall out of the sky, and you're like, what in the world? Why did instead of like continuing to be ignorant, let's use the basic principles of science and let's say, okay, if they fell out of the sky, something got them up there. Something levitated them. So could it be, the only answer that really works is some kind of energy field contained them when they were in the water, localized their gravity, levitated them up into the air, then it turns off at some point and they fall, and it's a very serious catastrophe, obviously, if you got a bunch of dead fish and frogs lying on the ground. But this is the basis of anti-gravity, the tornado. We naively assume that the reason why things levitate inside a tornado is gravity. That it's suction caused by vacuum, but it's not. It's actually anti-gravity, and there's many, many ways to prove that, including all these strange tornado anomalies where matter starts to blend together with other matter. And you have metal and wood blending together. You have all kinds of strange blendings. And there's pictures of it. So we have been hidden. The truth has been concealed from us as to how incredibly easy it is to make anti-gravity. The main problem that you need is you need enough power. You need a large enough source of energy to generate this cold plasma to begin with. And for the most part, conventional energy sources
don't do that unless you start using some new tricks. So as I said before, one of the things that I have been personally shown by an ally in the U.S. military who wants to be identified as Commander James T. Kirk, he has sent me video of this coil that's about this big, and it kicks out 750 volts, or 740, 750 volts off of 4 AA batteries. And the AA batteries create something called an electron cascade inside the coil. And apparently all you need to do is keep this thing kicking, and it will generate this massive amount of output. It all has to do with the windings of the coil. There was a certain number of windings. I think it was like 300 one way and then 12 this way and 12 that way. A lot of times you see crisscrossing wires in these exotic energy technologies. Crisscrossing electromagnetic fields at 9 degrees to each other does cause very strange things to happen. And if you play around with it too much, you're probably going to get a knock on the door. So I'm not saying that you should actually do this, because believe it or not, they do have satellites where if you achieve this effect at home and you're not authorized, they'll know that it happened, because the Earth actually has these lines called the global grid, which they can see on certain satellites. And if you start generating this energy, you might have a line that pops up and points to your house. X marks the spot. Well, and they're looking at the satellite going, oh my God, we better go get that guy, you know. So this is real. I mean, this has been going on for a long time, and anti-gravity will generate those lines. It will cause lines to form that didn't already exist. So you really can't do anti-gravity without getting caught. It's just the nature of the deep state and what we have right now, that this is something that could happen to you. So I don't recommend trying this at home. But if we move into a place where there's going to be some arrests and there's going to be a whole new way of looking at the world in light of this information that is disclosed, then that's amazing. And in the aftermath, I expect that a lot of great technology is going to be declassified. And so rather than, trusting other people to do this, I've been disappointed many times when I tried to trust other people, just no offense. I decided I should do it myself. And so we were very surprised when we first started to do these online conferences that it made as much as it did, frankly. But instead of investing in a bunch of things that were selfish or indulgent, I chose to invest the money in buying an old military facility that we could build hover cars in. So as a result, yes, I am the principal, or I was until recently, or whenever this, if we can get more money, I was the main person keeping this company going, and multiple times, bailed us out when there was no other way that we could have made it. It's only because of me, and it's only because of me putting money into this thing over and over again that it still exists, and that we have a facility, and that we have people who want to talk to us, and that we're dealing with these issues. So obviously there's a lot. Oh, wow, the Torah Project donated 2,000 MX. I don't know what MXs are. Hopefully somewhere close to dollars, but thank you, Torah Project. That's awesome. I guess I get donations. I haven't really looked before, but I got 2,000 MX and I got 200 MX, so thank you guys. That's really incredible. Let me read some of you guys. Wendy O says, I want a hover car. What else are you guys saying? All flat earthers' IP addresses are coming from the Ukraine. Yeah, okay, well, now that I'm reading it, you guys are going to talk really, really fast, right? 2,000 Torah Project, wow. Yeah, let David do what he wants with his money. Well, exactly. I mean, honestly, some of the stuff that happens out there, the things, the comments that people make and the remarks can be adolescent and childish, and in some senses it's as if adolescents have run the internet for a long time. It's a very adolescent place, and there's a lot of ribbing and fun poking, and so it's up to me what I would want to do, and if I wanted to get some huge house, that's fine, but like, I live in a modest home. It's 3,600 square feet here, and this is my one place. I didn't want to lose this. I pay a mortgage. I don't own it. I had to go back to Los Angeles, and so I paid rent out there, and then I paid rent in Sedona, and now I'm back here. And I've never done a winter here before. But I got to say that this house is really cool. It won Denver Architectural Digest. It got a centerfold spread because of this staircase actually right behind me. So where is it? Yeah, if you see, this is the extreme close-up shot. I have to like get my face totally aligned. I got like the Gibson Les Paul Custom over here, and I got the, what is it? I can't even do this. This is so crazy. The other guitar over here. This is your Stratocaster. So I like being flanked by the guitars because honestly, it appears that the hippie movement actually worked. It appears that Woodstock, rock and roll, we won. Because when it really came down to it and these folks made their grab for global tyranny, it did not succeed. I think that what we saw in Canada is equally as significant as Woodstock, if not more so. And we're looking at common, ordinary folks who are now becoming soldiers on the front lines, risking their lives, taking bold steps to bring out the truth. And again, if a sniper shoots once, he reveals his position. In a war, as soon as the enemy employs a certain tactic, you know that they have that stratagem and they can never use it again. They only get one chance. And so I had dreams indicating that the whole world was awakened by the fact that an existing government in a democratic Western country said that if you protest, that they will take everything you have and basically wipe you out. And these people were annoying. Okay, let's give the haters a little something. They annoyed the shit out of people by honking their horn. Okay, I get it. I have had noise nuisances, and it's unfrickin' believable how bad they can be. So I get that part. But there was a bigger thing going on here, which is that there's a lot of people in the world who now believe, with what they feel to be a mountain of credible evidence, that there is a very intense agenda at play. And the agenda involves having a lot fewer people here. And this is why I was bringing up all this stuff about DNA science and med beds and holographic beams using some sort of stem cell gelatinous substrate material. You could regrow a gunshot wound in no time with this stuff. Just squirt the gel in there, zip it up. Look, folks, people don't need to be dying. We don't need to have fewer people. We actually need more population because we need to explore the galaxy. We need to find out even just what's here on Earth. There's incredible cities underground of ruins that we have no idea how much treasure is already here on Earth. And Daniel Brinkley publicly admitted with me in some of the interviews we've done that he saw huge machine parts when he was a soldier and he was sent to Afghanistan in a big warehouse. You have these gigantic things, chunks of material that look like of technology from Star Trek, but warehouses full of advanced technology. And so there's been an underbelly of technology in these wars. Like, for example, in the Iraq War, why did the U.S. government first go into the Iraqi Museum of Antiquities when we invaded Iraq in 1991? Because they also had a whole room full of great toys that were locked up in chunks of rock, and they don't know how to get those toys out, and they're just storing it all. So a lot of people actually do know how to get those toys out. And so the amount of technology that our authorities have already found, the amount of technology that is potentially going to be made available to us, will create a paradigm shift on this planet that is so unprecedented that it's hard to even imagine. And honestly, there is no reason. I just got the streaming light again. You guys, are you still able to hear me? Please write if you can hear me, because it just said that it's got a problem again. Poor streaming status. Let me just try this. I'm going to break the stream and then do it again. Okay. All right, the data is coming back in. There we go. Excellent connection once again. Okay, great. I'm so glad that I learned that I can actually turn off my live stream and turn it back on in the software and not break the thing. Thank you. I got it. Everybody, I can hear you. So that's good. So yeah, I'm really grateful that I can actually apparently turn this off and turn it back on. Yeah, it is okay. It's pretty crazy. It is pretty crazy, all right? But whatever, it's hair. Get over it. You know, you're not paying for the box. You're paying for the candy inside the box, right? So, and you're not even paying. I mean, this is a free show. What am I talking? Well, I got 2,000 MXs, whatever. The good rabbi has sent me 2,000 MXs, so I thank you. Somebody's saying that I'm a clone. Don't do the close-up. I don't know. Look, if I pay attention to everything you guys tell me, I'm going to lose my mind. But it's all right here. Anything you write me is going to show up right here. So, like, remember, I do see that. And if you hurt my feelings, I may get sad, and I may just not want to play anymore. I might get sad. Okay, so don't hurt my feelings when I come over here. I want to be inspired by this. You know, like, it's hair, okay? Who gives a shit what it looks like? Seriously, folks. So getting back to the topic at hand here, and I am drifting around in a lot of different areas because I wanted to do a show where I'm not doing slides and I just kind of take you through what I see is happening here in the world and try to alleviate some of this incredible fear that just, to me, seems pretty inappropriate and not where we need to be going. So first of all, we're not going to have a nuclear war. There are ETs here. They've been here for a long time. There are all kinds of ruins that they found in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Libya. There's tons of technology here. And why would you want to get rid of people? We need more people to be able to explore the ruins. And so I think that what's happened here is that we have been through most of a global initiation that normally doesn't happen this way. Normally, this is not the way it works, and I'm already an hour and a half in, so I better get back to my main topic, which we're totally on track for. Okay, so this main cycle, you got to remember, folks, that the Earth's axis is supposedly, you know, going through this slow counter-rotating wobble like this, right? And as it does this, it takes 25,000 years for that process to complete itself. So and it rotates in the opposite direction of the normal tilt of the Earth. And so this is one of the law of one concepts, one of the quotes they give that I wanted to add right here. There is no history as we understand your concept. And if you try to meditate on this concept of there is no history, what does that really mean? Well, the idea is that we are living in an illusion. The law of one says that the only thing that really exists is consciousness, and that consciousness is the author of reality, and therefore we're 3D printing our imagination into being. If we believe that the Earth is going to be destroyed, then maybe it would. And at the end of these cycles, normally that's what happens. So when they say there is no history, even the concept of linear time itself falls apart. Linear time, if you can nullify gravity, if you can use anti-gravity, certain types of anti-gravity, it will cause time travel. Now, we absolutely do not want time travel to be declassified and given to people anytime soon. And we're going to have to go through a major growing up phase, and there's going to have to be laws put in place about time travel, because the last thing you want is some idiot thinking that he can go fix his mistakes by traveling back in time and killing somebody. You can create time paradoxes that can really screw people up. And so this is not something that you just give people, and we have to be able to be mature enough to use this wisely, which I don't think we're at that point. But thankfully, there are other types of anti-gravity that we have that do not involve time travel that we can use earlier and that will allow us to travel. So getting back to the hover car discussion, I know I'm jumping around. Look, we know this works. We know that we have vertical takeoff and landing capability. One of our models is the SM-920, which is a vertical takeoff and landing firefighting aircraft, where we have a higher capacity cargo bay that can store water. So imagine if you could just drop the sucker right down into a lake, soak up the water, just like the concept of the falling fish or frogs, except now we're doing it with an airplane, and we're creating that same kind of bubble-like energy field, but we're doing it with technology. You grab the water, you go drop it on the fire, and then you go back and you get some more. It's incredible. More than anything else, I like to look at how our society will be transformed by the advent of new technology. As you may know, my great-grandfather, Frederick Wilcock, actually was the principal architect and engineer for the New York City subway project. He had a JD in law and a PhD in engineering, which is rare for anybody to get 2 degrees. But this is what he needed to be able to solve the engineering problems associated with building the subway, as well as to sign contracts, understand legalese, and due diligence, and be able to make sure that everything gets done. So I'm from a family that gets things done in terms of engineering. I'm from a family where we actually completed the project. We didn't screw anybody. We didn't come in, terribly over budget, and we got the subway done. And then in the aftermath of that, it allowed commerce to flow much more quickly. New York became the financial center through Wall Street. And the reason why Wall Street was in New York and not somewhere else is because of the subway. Because the subway, for the first time in an era of, railroad trains, the subway allows people to very quickly travel point to point and have meetings, business meetings. And so when you have the New York City subway system get built, it allowed the United States to become the great industrial center of the world. America was first in the Industrial Revolution and had a head start on other countries. So when we have anti-gravity become available to people, we have launched a second industrial revolution. But this time it's with green energy and clean technology that affords us many more benefits than the ones that we have under our current system, because we're not paying for it, we're not polluting when we use it, and it greatly increases the freedom to travel for the average human being. So isn't it interesting that there are all these different prophecies around the world, getting back to our slides, and I'm going to actually skip ahead just a little bit here. When we get back to our slides, I want to talk about this concept of the 25,000-year cycle for a minute here, if I can get through it. Yeah, do I need that? Okay. Yeah, so let's cut to this. All right, this is good. Okay, so bear in mind that I probably am one of the leading experts, at least, on this particular subject of the solar flash. I don't know if anybody else has studied it more than me. I mean, Graham Hancock maybe, but pretty much I'm the main guy. I don't think anybody else ever wrote about ekpyrosis. Well, what's ekpyrosis? Ekpyrosis is this concept that the sun blows up at the end of the cycle, and it shows up in literally 35 different ancient cultures, some variation of ekpyrosis. Now, blows up, you mean supernova? No. It appears that the sun is still there, but it goes poof, and it does this big fireball. And the fireball is we're taught to expect it. We're taught to expect it in 35 different ancient traditions. And this also includes, for example, the Stoic philosophers. So getting back to this for a second, ekpyrosis is a Stoic belief in the periodic destruction of the cosmos, our solar system, our planet, etc., by a great conflagration, which is a big fireball, every great year. The cosmos is then recreated in palingenesis, thankfully having nothing to do with Sarah Palin. It's not going to be made in her image, I don't think, only to be destroyed again at the end of the new cycle. This form of catastrophe is the opposite of kataklysmos, or cataclysm, which is the destruction of the earth by water. The concept of ekpyrosis is attributed to Chrysippus by the Greek historian Plutarch. Okay, so ekpyrosis, there you go. And guess what? If you go into Zoroastrianism, they have molten metal that flows over the land, and they call that frashokareti, and it appears that they're describing the solar flash. In Hinduism, they very directly predict a solar flash. They call it the Yuga fire at the end of an age. They also call it the Samvara fire or the Samvartika fire. And I've proven there's over 130 references to this in the Hindu scripture. the Hindu scripture appears to be written by spacefaring extraterrestrials who were camped out on Earth. They don't necessarily live here, but they were here for a while. This is why Krishna looks human but has dark blue skin. They also have Rakshasas, which are clearly described in the Vedas as reptilian humanoids that they're at war with. And so you have multiple ET groups that were here on Earth at the time that the Vedas were written, and they're trying to coexist with each other, but it doesn't work out. There's two civilizations. There's Atlantis, which is on what we now call Antarctica, and there's Rama, which is where the Vedic scriptures were written, and that's in the area that we now call Siberia. They apparently had a nuclear war and tried to wipe each other out, and unfortunately, if you use nuclear weapons and benevolent ETs don't catch it and make you stop before it happens, it can destabilize the rotation of the Earth because the energy that a nuke releases can greatly disrupt that process. And so unfortunately, by having that nuclear war, they apparently caused the Earth to shift, which nobody expected. I mean, yeah, they expected a big bomb to go off, but they didn't expect a planet-killing catastrophe to occur. In texts like the Book of Enoch, we see that many different cultures were warned about this in advance, they were prepared for it, and they were rescued by something equivalent to Noah's Ark, but maybe more like a Star Trek version of Noah's Ark, where those who needed to be rescued were rescued, and those who were left behind got to experience the big disaster. And so Atlantis becomes Antarctica. It gets inundated by water from the ocean. It sinks under the sea. And because the Earth is now shifted on its axis, it's now the South Pole. And so we no longer can live there in a t-shirt and Hawaiian shorts. Maybe you can during certain times of the year, but it's pretty much offset to, regular people aren't usually going to Antarctica, but we've heard from every different insider who has this access to the secret space information I'm talking about. Pretty much everybody agrees that there's some phenomenal stuff that we found under the ice in Antarctica. Pyramids that look like the ones you see in Mesoamerica, and technology, including at least one huge mothership that is under the ice that we, as in the United States and other countries, have been covertly studying since the 1950s. So I expect that one of the things that we are going to learn about, probably sooner rather than later, is new architecture that will be identified undersea in various locations, probably including around Antarctica and maybe even in Antarctica, that shows that this was some kind of civilization that was building these pyramids before the time that we normally would think they were built, obviously, because we're talking 12,000 years ago is when we expected that this flood took place. So when that information debuts and we are told that there was a civilization here and that the entire planet tilted on its axis, that the entire ocean flowed over an entire continent and drowned everybody and crushed everything and turned into ice and completely destroyed the world. That's an extinction level event, more or less. So if we get told that information, that's going to change the human relationship that we have with our Earth dramatically. We're now going to see that, yes, the end of the world appears to be possible. The end of the world appears like it could happen. The world could literally just get trashed. Well, the time that this thing happened with Atlantis also happens to be right about at the halfway point of this 25,000-year cycle. But the bottom line is, again, 35 different ancient cultures, according to these two historians, Giorgio de Santillana and Hertha von der Schend. They wrote this book called Hamlet's Mill that goes into this, and I learned about it from Graham Hancock in his amazing masterpiece, Fingerprints of the Gods, which I read in 1996. So the 35 different ancient cultures all seem to be expecting a solar flash or ekpyrosis, which would do at least as much damage as the Atlantean catastrophe. And so then if we find out that Atlantis really did sink, this makes it a lot more sobering. But what if this is going to happen to us again? Okay, so back to the slide. I don't even need to say that because I am the slide. I also want to point out that the Greeks have this philosophy among other cultures, about the Golden Age. And so if you go into the Cambridge Classical Journal, this is from Cambridge University Press, you could get astonishingly boring titles like an essay on Anaxagoras. Imagine how much fun you would have tearing through this in a typical weekend, you know? But anyway, one of the things they put out is the Classical Quarterly, and I believe this was written by a woman, Henrietta or Heather or whatever. But, you know, there was a lot of sexism against women, so she didn't want to identify herself as a woman. But H.C. Baldry wrote this amazing academic paper called Who Invented the Golden Age in 1952. And she makes this amazing case, which is that the word Golden Age, that we've heard so many times, actually translates as golden race. And there's two main words that this hinges off of, which is aetas and secula. And aetas actually usually means, both of them usually are seen to mean age. So aetas or secula would translate as age if you see these words. But then H.C. Baldry says, well, yeah, but if you actually go to any other book from the same time period, using the same language, these words actually translate to mean race, not age. And then it also appears that they covered it up. They didn't want us to know that at the end of this 25,000 year cycle, which so much research said was going to happen at the end of the year 2012, and I'll get into that in a minute, we had a lot of data showing the year 2012. We had so much, including the fact that there is the Mayan calendar. And I've studied this probably as much as anyone. And I am the only person I'm aware of who has pointed out that each of the cycles that the Mayans were counting, the Tzolk'in of 260 days, the Khatun of about 20 years, the Baktun of about 400 years, that these cycles the Mayan calendar calculates are mathematically perfectly in sync with the movements of planets in our solar system. Now, how did the Mayans know this? Yet they did. It's right there in the Mayan calendar. And so we have a very strange phenomenon where in Western astrology, we had the shift from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, and at the same time, we had the Mayan calendar shifting into what many of these indigenous tribes called the fifth sun. But with the Mayan calendar version of it, it's happening at the end of 2012, December 21st, 2012 is when it's calculated. But then if you look on the eastern side, on the other side of the planet, a totally geographically isolated culture separated by the Atlantic Ocean, they're saying that the age of Pisces shifts to the age of Aquarius in approximately 2011 or 2012. So right off the bat, it was astonishing to me to see the Mayan calendar and Western astrology both give almost exactly the same year for when they expected this age of Aquarius to be occurring. And then all 35 of these ancient traditions, according to Santayana and Van de Schend, have the encoded information about this 25,000 year cycle written into their mythology. So everybody knows about this. So we have a pretty much unified agreement on the importance of the year 2012. And so now let me talk about the D of the CTP, which is a really important thing, and then we'll get back to our slides real quick. Now, what's that? The doctrine of the convergent timeline paradox is something that I've heard about from multiple insiders, and in fact, I'm still hearing about it now, but I'm still hearing insiders tell me today that the DCTP is very important. Now, what is the DCTP exactly? What is this? The DCTP was an observation that was made that there was a knot in time in 2012. So the people who were actually screwing around with time travel technology, time viewing technology, time altering technology, time vector generators, TVGs, where you're trying to vectorize energy towards a particular timeline that you want to magnetize, all this stuff they've been screwing with, okay? Time travel, as it turns out, if you wanted to look at various future realities, it was all fine and good. They have a way of doing this, and it was called looking glass. So looking glass is something I read about in books by Timothy Good going back to, 93, I think is when I first read about it, in a book called Alien Contact by Timothy Good. Pretty much everybody that I've spoken to who's an insider has either interacted with looking glass or at least heard of it. And this is a technology that allows you to see into the future. You can't modify the future, but you can look at it. And they were able to do this, and everything was fine up until 1983, okay? And in 1983, we created some kind of terrible wound in time, a rift in time. Now, we, meaning people on Earth, certainly not anything I would have done, but there was a project on Montauk Point, Long Island, that's typically called the Montauk Project, but it actually was known as Phoenix 3. There was a Phoenix 1 and a Phoenix 2, and each of the people who worked on those projects were then fired at the end of that phase so that they wouldn't know the next phase. But the project was essentially intended to take a seat that they had found in a crashed UFO, hook it up to a power supply, and then see what happens, because they had determined that the ETs were able to navigate by telepathically interfacing with their own ship through the seat. The seat interfaces with your consciousness, it links to the ship, and you can think about where you want to go, and then a vortex or portal opens up, and you fly through the portal, and then you end up at the location you want to go. And most amazing is that this works for time travel as well as for space travel. So they worked on this at Montauk Point, Long Island. It was supposedly through Brookhaven National Labs. That was where his checks were coming from. This was Bruce Perrett is his real name. Now that he's deceased, I can say that. He did not want me to reveal his identity while he was alive. But he came to L&L Research. He lived with us in Louisville, Kentucky. He felt the Law of One was the only source he'd ever found that added up with the stuff he saw working at Montauk. So he was there. He was there helping get this thing going and personally working with Duncan Cameron, who was the main person they used in the chair. And they got results. They were able to send people through space and time. And it's sad because a lot of those people didn't come back and they were going against their own will. They were being forced through the hole. But this is what was being done. There's so many ethical violations, I'm sure, that have occurred in all of these different types of research. It's just unbelievable. But anyway, the whole, let's go over here again. When we see what the results are of taking this type of information and making it a new path for yourself, this path, all the things I'm sharing with you, it changes everything that we thought we knew about reality. It changes everything that we thought we knew about life on Earth, who we are, where we're going. All that stuff gets thrown out the window, and we have a whole batch of new assumptions. Extraterrestrials have been here the whole time, and they do have a prime directive. They are waiting for us to catch up, and we have been very slow to catch up. And so when you start to use this exotic technology, when you start to use things like the Montauk chair, these beings use this every day. It's normal for them to think about where they want to go and create a portal and fly through it. But it wasn't normal for people in Montauk. So there was a lot of ethics problems because they were picking up kids on the street, sending them through the hole, and they weren't coming back alive. And the people in the base decided that they wanted to do something, so they manifested a monster. And this was on, I think it was August 12th, 1983, if I remember correctly. It was something like that. And so, believe it or not, one of the things that the ship could also do is it could manifest things. So if you needed a particular tool or an object, and you're in the chair, you could think about that tool or object, and the ship just makes the tool for you. So that's pretty cool. So in the case of the Montauk chair, they could manifest whatever they wanted. They could manifest a wooden chair. Literally, you could make a wooden chair, and it would show up in the room, and it would be there for a period of time, and then it would disappear. And you also apparently, with the power of the chair, could create life forms. So what these guys did was to create a massive life form based upon the movie Forbidden Planet, the so-called creature from the id, and they set this thing loose to kick ass and destroy the entire facility, which it did. Bruce happened to not go to work that day, which was really amazing that he actually didn't go, and so they didn't give him the typical mind wipe that he would have gotten if he had gone to work that day, or probably would have died, honestly. But they never mind wiped him, and they let him go back to work, and he stayed in contact with a group of people who had also been there, so he was getting briefings. So it was a lot to get proof that Montauk was real, because it was, certainly one of the most dubious parts of the UFO canon, and I didn't think it was true. So to find out firsthand that somebody had worked there, and wow, Montauk is real? It's unbelievable. But so here's the thing. These guys, as they were going through the tunnel, they started to be able to send people correctly, and they could send people through time. So it wasn't just like everybody's dying. When you go through this portal, it turns out that it looks like you're going through a tube of like lines of lights, and the lights are kind of spinning through the tube. So it's like spinning like a spiral kind of light tube that you're going through is really what they apparently saw. They would try to send them to different points in time, but then there was something very, very bizarre that always happened at the end of the year 2012, and they could calculate this based on one of the waves that the chair would create. Bruce's job was analyzing approximately 200 different waveforms that the chair gave off through fiber optic cables. There was a big box of them that came through the wall, and at first they didn't even let him see what was in the other side of the room. They'd have Duncan in the room, they'd be running the chair, he didn't know what was going on, there's these fiber optic cables coming through the wall, he connected certain of them up and was analyzing their waveforms. And so one of the waveforms happened to be 20 years, and you could tell where the person was in time by analyzing that particular waveform. So what they discovered was that when you go to December 21st, 2012, the exact mathematical end of the Mayan calendar, that the people going through the time portal would experience something they called the full out. Now, what does the full out mean? It means that they would feel that they were as big as the universe and as small as a subatomic particle. They had access to all information. It was omniscient intelligence. And then after that full out period, everything after December 21st, 2012, it would change each time they went there. It didn't stay the same. It doesn't look like it's a stable future anymore. So that was one of the things that's very strangely associated with the end of the Mayan calendar and with the change into the age of Aquarius in Western astrology. But also, after this incident in Montauk where they created the creature from the id, this monster that emerged, I guess the monster was so big and it took so much energy from the Earth's own consciousness perhaps to make that thing, that it actually damaged our ability to look forward into time through Looking Glass. And every insider I've spoken to has essentially revealed pretty much the same thing, which is that after August 12th, 1983, there were interlaced images. So what does this mean? This means that when you're looking at Looking Glass, you can't really tell what you're seeing because there's two sets of images, and they're flickering back and forth between the two. So you actually have to film it on high speed, you have to slow it down, and then if you get like 5 frames of this timeline, and then you got to take those and chop it and drop it in this box, and then you get 5 frames of the other timeline, you chop it and drop it in this box, then you go back to the first 5 frames, put those next to the previous 5, etc. So you literally have to edit the video together, and they didn't have good technology to do stuff like this in the 80s, so this was incredibly difficult, time-consuming, but if you slowed down each of the two things, then you would see 2 different timelines for humanity. And they actually called it Timeline 1 and Timeline 2. And those timelines would interlace with each other. So the interlace refers to how many seconds do you see the one, how many seconds do you see the other, how much time is there where one is exposed versus the other. And it stays the same at a given period. But this is where it gets weird because they found that as you went towards December 21st, 2012, that the flicker frequency would get faster and faster meaning that now you might only get one frame of one timeline and one frame of the other timeline, and they're flickering so fast. As you get towards 2012, you're trying to look past 2012, you can't see anything because you can't get a camera that runs high-speed film fast enough to capture the two images of the two timelines as they're going back and forth. Okay, I'm still on. Good. So you don't have the technology, and then it's vibrating so fast that it turned into pure white light. And then literally that's all they can see is pure white light, and they could not use the looking glass technology past this moment of pure white light. The looking glass technology no longer would work past December 21st, 2012. So it's quite one thing to look at this from the perspective of Western astrology, from the perspective of very amazing stuff that we see in the Mayan calendar, and then we could also talk about the idea that the Law of One itself, the series that I've based my life's work on, predicts something to happen right around the year 2012. They said approximately 30 years after 1981. Well, that would be 2011, i.e. 2011, 2012. And so this, again, so many different ancient cultures are expecting that as we go through this transformational process, that there's going to be some sort of catastrophe. And we were even led to believe that, maybe there's no other way. But even though there's a catastrophe, they then tell us, well, don't worry about it, because after the catastrophe, everything's just going to be awesome. Because then it says, okay, we're going to talk about the Golden Age and where this is all going. There are many passages in ancient literature which depict an imaginary existence different from the hardships of real life, an existence blessed with nature's bounty, untroubled by strife or want. Naturally, this happy state is always placed somewhere or sometime outside our normal human experience, whether it is off the map in some remote quarter of the world or in Elysium after death, the dim future, or the distant past. Such an imaginary time of bliss in the past or the future has become known as the Golden Age. When first mentioned in Hesiod's Works and Days, it is not explained, but briefly alluded to as the state that we would now enjoy if the gods had not hidden the true means of life from us. And of course, this would include technology as well as consciousness abilities that we don't now have, magic powers. References in later literature show an even greater variety of belief about the time and place of this happier life, a variety that cannot be traced back to Hesiod or any other single source, but suggests an old and widespread tradition handled at different times and places by different authors in many different ways. Further confirmation may be sought in the various parallels contained in Eastern literature, notably the Indo-Iranian myth in which Yima of the Zoroastrian Avesta and Yama of the Hindu Vedas must have had their common source. The story of a past age of happiness under a ruler who, when it ended, became the lord of a paradise inhabited by the souls of the blessed. God played no part in the generally accepted picture of those whom Hesiod called the golden race. These Greek authors, like Hesiod, all refer to a golden race. Whoa! It is only in Latin poetry that this is sometimes replaced by a golden age. And they really covered up the golden race part. That's the bottom line. And they talk about this elsewhere in the paper. Gold, far from having a place in the traditional picture, was seen as one of the causes of degeneration from this happy world. It was Roman writers who made the transition from golden race to golden age, and we know what Rome gave us, the Illuminati, among other things. And from them, the concept was handed down into more modern literature. So another thing that is, again, Roman and is a mystery school religion, really, comes out of the Masonic tradition. You may not know this, but the Masonic Lodge was patterned off of the Mithraic Lodge. Mithras was a being that had a lot of similarities to Jesus in his descriptions. And I believe that Mithras most likely was another example of an extraterrestrial, higher type of being coming here and trying to teach us about the solar flash. So in this case, we have this particular religious icon, which is, again, probably predictive of the coming of Christ, the Lion of Judah. And this is called the Leon Tocephalus, or lion-headed. Leon is head, Leon is lion, Seph is head. So the Mithraists, again, you see the concept of him merging from the tomb here. This is the immortality, But what's interesting is that whoever gave this to the Romans, and I believe it was an extraterrestrial, they created a religious rite where the priest or whoever would take this sculpture of a lion-headed human man with a snake wrapped around, which again probably symbolizes DNA, the DNA genetic code, and also the Kundalini. And then what he would do is he would put alcohol in his mouth and blow flames through the mouth of the lion onto a lit, something that he's holding on to. And so this is an example of the Leontocephalus and his breath of fire, where he's breathing out fire from his mouth onto the world in this case. So what are we seeing here? This is another encrypted description of the sun, and it was given to the Romans. So the Romans got their own Mithraic prophecies about the Leontocephalus, the lion-headed, the coming of the solar flash, because again, you're blowing fire out of his mouth, which is what they're expecting the sun is going to do at the end of the age. So the DCTP, getting back to that real quick, this is considered a fact. It is something that everybody has had to deal with when they use looking glass, any type of time travel, any type of anything. You simply can't see past the year 2012. And everybody, myself included, assumed that this was because in the year 2012, at the end of the year 2012, that the sun is going to have a solar flash, an ekpyrosis, a Frashokareti, or a Samvartika fire, Yuga fire. Everybody's got the same thing, or Leontocephalus in his breath of fire. It's in Christianity, it's in Judaism, it's in everywhere. Everybody's got it. So, and then again, remember, probably the majority, in fact, this is such a good point. This is worth the close-up. So let's do the close-up. This is worth it, folks. Okay, so most of our money has been spent on anticipating a solar flash catastrophe, an ekpyrosis event that would destroy life on Earth, and that the elites wanted to have their own cities underground where they would be fine. And if they didn't do it from nuclear war, they do it from, other means. And we're seeing that nuclear is not the only way for them to try to accomplish something like this, if they would see it as an accomplishment. So going back to the vintage insider Phil Schneider. Got it. The vintage insider Phil Schneider, who, believe it or not, I hadn't actually watched his videos at all until very recently, because there's a man out there whose last name is Adam with an S, and his first name is Mike, and you probably know who I'm talking about. I did a movie with him that is incredibly important for you to watch. It's called Moment of Truth, and it is available at thedisclosure.com. It's about 4 hours long, and you can also go to Mike's own network and just type in his name. You'll find it pretty quickly. Bright, and then after that is Eon, E-O-N. But anyway, I have to be very careful in how I say certain things, of course, because, you know why. But anyway, go watch Moment of Truth if you haven't already seen that, because I put a lot of B-roll into that. I'm very proud of the production value, and we are talking about some very stunning subjects, including this concept of what are extraterrestrials really here for, and are some of them evil? And are they in fact human trafficking? And is that what the negative side is really doing here? And I believe the answer is yes. But the positive benevolent side is a lot more interesting than that. And the positive benevolent side has led all of us to believe that, through its great teachers, that we were going to have this catastrophe. So Phil Schneider is out there saying, look, we consider it to be an act of compassion to depopulate the planet, because if you live around for the solar flash, it's a lot worse. All we know is we're looking at, if you look at all these insider testimonies put together, they expect that the solar flash is going to happen. They expect that the lights go off after 2012. That's why it turns bright white. They can't see into the future past 2012. They have no idea what's going on, and they expect the sun's going to give off a flash and the only way that you could survive is to live underground. Okay? Well, if we were going to have a solar flash, it would make sense that the sun must be moving into an area where there is more energy. And NASA, in fact, is censoring research to this very degree. So this is the work of Dr. Don Szymanski. I am a little bit after the 2-hour point now, and I don't want to go past maybe 2.5 hours if I can avoid it. So I think I can make it because we want to do our meditation. So I don't want to keep you too terribly long. I do have a life, as you know. So Dr. Don Szymanski came out with some stunning information on his journal, saying that NASA was censoring his research showing that we're moving into a more energized region of the galaxy. His research specifically focuses on the local interstellar medium, which is the stuff right around our galaxy. So here's Dr. Don Szymanski on C-SPAN. So, obviously he's got enough clout to make it on television. And he certainly knows how to write equations, as you can see here. So then when you go to his webpage, this shows his incredible amount of affiliations, positions, awards. I mean, he's an incredible guy. And then on his online write-up, this is what he says. Research on the properties of the local interstellar medium have been carried out in scattered periods beginning in 1978. The NASA Space Physics Division has shown a persistent pernicious bias. Now that word means deadly, evil, and insidious, okay? A persistent, deadly, evil, and insidious bias against work on the effects of neutral gas in the local interstellar medium. He's studying gas. Bernoulli's law, right? And all this kind of, who cares? Who cares? Wow, let the guy study his freaking gas. You're going to have a deadly, evil, and insidious bias against this? So again, here it is. I actually made the slide for this. Just to reiterate the point, a persistent, pernicious bias against this work. Well, what does pernicious mean? Let's look it up on dictionary.com. It says causing insidious harm or ruin, deadly, fatal, evil, and wicked. So this is going back to by the way, folks, 1978, they said they had a pernicious, deadly, evil, insidious bias against his work, which was showing us, get this, that we're moving into a cloud of higher energy in the galaxy, and it's zapping the whole solar system. All the planets are experiencing the same climate change that we see on Earth. Now, does this mean that we should continue burning gas and not use alternative energy sources? Absolutely not. But also, global warming is not simply the result of greenhouse gases. It's an interplanetary effect. And so for me, if you're expecting the sun to blow up, if you're expecting this big flash of energy to come off in all these ancient prophecies, which they kept secret, because remember, Masonry is essentially a derivative of Mithraic tradition. The Masonic Lodge is built to look like the Mithraic Lodge. So the solar flash is the whole freaking point, folks. The Freemasons, when you get up to the higher levels, they know or they think the sun's going to do this. And they thought they knew when. And so Phil Schneider actually said, yeah, it's an act of compassion to save people from this terrible disaster. So here we see NASA having a deadly, evil, and insidious bias against him doing this kind of research. And he's talking about this collision of the solar wind with the local interstellar medium, which creates a boundary of glowing energy called a termination shock. And he says this has only been recently recognized in the particle facility, in the particle community, supported primarily by the Space Science Division. Well, they kept such a tight lid on this that it wasn't until Dr. Merov Ofer in around 2009, October 2009, and thankfully we're dealing with woman power here, right? She published this amazing paper called A Strong, Highly Tilted Interstellar Magnetic Field Near the Solar System. Now let's just think about what that title actually says. A strong interstellar magnetic field near the solar system. Well, the bottom line is that it's new. It's not an interstellar magnetic field that was there before. It appears to be like 1,000% stronger, and it appears to have gotten stronger recently. And there's outrageously massive temperatures there, like 5,000 degrees Celsius temperatures, and a much, much higher magnetic charge. And it looks as if we're drifting into this thing as a magnetic cloud. Okay? Now, NASA was going to knock you off, arguably, deadly, evil, insidious by. Maybe they're not really going to kill you, okay? But they certainly are going to be mad, and they're going to threaten you, and they're going to be very angry and call you into a meeting and put you in one chair and yell at you. You know, if you talk about the fact that there's this extra energy that our solar system is moving into, why would NASA be so pissed off about this in 1978? Because they already expected the solar flash back then. They already expected everybody was going to die. They didn't care about polluting the earth. They didn't care about industrial emissions because they said, well, what does it matter if we go and turn a bunch of frogs into three-headed frogs as long as we've got profit, and the earth's going to blow up anyway, so who gives a crap? I mean, that's literally the attitude they had, and the idea that genocide would be compassionate because it would save us from having to go through this horrific disaster where they could only survive underground or off-planet. Okay? So here's the thing that is so exciting, folks. When we go into the sun's closest neighbor, it actually did have a solar flash. So let's just say for a minute that perhaps this cloud that we're moving into is just massive, massive in size. And it's much bigger than two stars next to each other. Well, if we and another star are drifting into the same cloud roughly at the same time, because maybe it's huge, who's the closest star to us? And the closest star to us happens to be Alpha Centauri. So here's the map that shows you this. The sun is the yellow circle in the middle, and then we have Barnard star out there at the largest perimeter. That's at the 6 light-year radius, as you can see. Then, let me go back there. We have the 4 light-year radius, and then we have a 2 light-year radius. There's nothing there. Then the Oort cloud. Okay, so if you go out to the 4 light-year circle again, and then right after that circle, in the space between 4 light-years and 6 light-years, you see Alpha Centauri and Proxima Centauri. Okay, so Proxima Centauri and Alpha Centauri are bound together in a trinary system, meaning there's 3 stars, and the 2 main stars orbit each other one way, and then the tiny one, Proxima, orbits in a very different orbit, as you see here. So, anyway, Proxima b, that was the planet. I'm sorry, that was the planet. So, Proxima has this planet that was found around it, and everybody got really excited, thinking, there's this place right next door. It's so close. It's like it's meant to be. We can fly right over to our closest neighbor, 4.3 light years away. We show up. Here's this Earth-like planet. So they got excited about it for that reason. And I got to get back to my slide now. So Stephen Hawking was even saying, we could do this with a little sail that we have just made out of aluminum foil, and we hit it with a laser, we accelerate it to light speed, or near light speed. We could actually send something there within 20 years, maybe do some filming. But then, all our hopes for habitating our nearest neighbor were dashed, because guess what, folks? There was a solar flash on Proxima Centauri. Just exactly the same thing that the prophecies told us that we were expecting on Earth could have happened there. So scientists have discovered a flare off the sun's closest stellar neighbor, Proxima Centauri. Many are reporting that it could spell trouble for any hope of life on its exoplanet Proxima b, but it might also kill off a presumed set of other planets around the star. The researchers used data from the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array, or ALMA, dozens of radio dishes in the Chilean desert that can image radio wavelength light emissions to precise detail. But rather than just average all the data out, they watched how it changed over time. So here is the Atacama Large Millimeter Array. Again, dozens of radio dishes in the Chilean desert, and they can point it at one place and get very advanced data off of particular objects, including, in this case, Proxima, by doing this. This new analysis implied that the star actually released a 1-minute-long flare 1,000 times brighter than the star's usual shine, perhaps 10 times brighter than the most powerful solar flares from our own sun on record, according to Alicia Weinberger, one of the scientists involved. So let's just stop right there. Our very closest neighbor next door, fairly recently, had a 1 minute long enormous solar flash event where it became 10 times brighter than any of the most powerful solar flares we have on record. And remember, the Carrington event, 1870, whatever it was, or it might have been older, 1840 something, but it melted all the telegraph wires that were, oops, that's my bad. So, why are you doing that? Okay. Anyway, the Carrington event melted all the telegraph wires and was a horrible thing. So imagine 10 times worse than the Carrington event. That is the solar flash. I mean, this is what so many ancient prophecies told us to expect, and it happened next door. Their results have been accepted to Astrophysical Journal letters. So this is a very important one. This is the National Radio Astronomy Observatory website, and it's February 26th, 2018. So we did not know about this until fairly recently. This is new data. Okay, but again, this is from the actual Radio Astronomy Observatory website itself. So they are describing their own firsthand results of using all those dishes in Chile to observe Proxima and observe this solar flare that happened. Now this is, again, from the NRAO, the official website, the real telescope website, folks, said March 24th, 2017. Now this date becomes all important. It's incredible because, well, you'll see why. March 24th, 2017 was no ordinary day for Proxima Centauri, said Meredith McGregor, an astronomer at the Carnegie Institution for Science, Department of Terrestrial Magnetism in Washington, D.C., who led the research with fellow Carnegie astronomer Alicia Weinberger. So if we take March 24th and we subtract the distance of 4.3 light years, we roughly get, let's start by taking 4 years off of March 27. You take 4 years off, now you're March 2013. Then you got to take 12 months and make it digital, and this is the only way you can do it with a calculator unless you want to use fractions and geek out like that. Digital's better. So turn it to 0.3 months, which is the other, because you got 4.3 light years, right? So you need your 4 years and you need your 0.3. So 0.3 is 4 months. Okay, so 4.3 would mean 4 years and 4 months. So when we subtract all this up, we get something that is pretty darn amazing, because March 24th, 2013, 4 years, and then you knock off your extra 4 months, you're down to December 24th, 2012, which is, again, right smack dab on the money with the timing of this whole solar flash thing, December 21st, 2012. And my research showed that these physics cycles control all the orbits of the planets and that they're actually very, very recognizable. So there's a lot of stuff here to look at. And I was okay with this data for a while, and then I said, well, okay, how reliable is this figure of information? So I wanted to go in and do more work and see if I could tighten it up even more, because this came right off of the National Radio Astronomy website. So sure enough, I type it in on Google, and this is fairly recently. I just did this a couple months ago. I guess it was sometime after December 2020. And it says 4.243 light years. Okay, so that's our actual number. We have a real number we can play with now. So we know the exact date that it happened, which was March something 2017. And then we have the 4.243 light years. It's easy to calculate this because a year is 365.2422 days. So you can calculate it by the day. Okay, and that makes it pretty easy. So, so how much does the 4.243 versus the 4.3 affect the actual number that we're going to get? In other words, how many months would there be in 2.243 years? Because the 4 years are going to stay the same. So we have 4.243. So we only need to crack the 0.243, because the 4 years is always 4 years. That's easy. This is where we got to screw around with math. So we start with the exact number of days. Again, what is 24.3% of 365.2422 days? That's how you would do it, okay? It turns out that it's 88.695 days, almost 90 days, or about 3 months. And it sounds like a letdown. Does it mean that we're off? Well, let me calculate this exactly. So this is where I finally said, okay, I got to stop screwing around. And I found a website called timeanddate.com that allows you to take an exact date and then change it. So here's what I did. I had March 24th, 2017, which was the day that the solar flash was observed by us, okay? And then I say here, as you can see in this field, it says add or subtract, so I subtract 4 years. I set it to subtract, and then I subtracted 88 days, okay? So you put in your start date, you put in how many days you want to subtract, and then you hit that green button on the bottom, and it says calculate new date. Little bit of magic dust, and boom, the result comes out to Wednesday, December 26th, 2012. And then I said, well, wait a minute, it's actually not 88 days, it's almost 89. So would we round 88 up or down? Round up the total number of days to 89 days, and now we actually have the solar flash, the gift from Christ. The resurgence of Christ in the Bible, this is what it's all associated with, shows up on Christmas Day 2012, only 4 days off from the Mayan calendar end date. This is our next door neighbor. This is the closest star next to us. And it blows up, just like the ancient prophecies said, only 4 days off from the Mayan calendar end date. And I'm going to even ante up a step further, folks, and I'm going to say, don't worry about that. Worry about the fact that our math probably isn't correct and the 4 days are not actually there. It's a mistake, which means that the real solar flash happened on December 21st, and we simply can't measure the distance to Proxima Centauri accurately enough to really dial in that measurement. But either way, it's only 4 days off. I mean, it's like, who cares? So 35 different ancient cultures, which obviously were visited by extraterrestrials. They built pyramids. They had advanced technology. They knew about the planets. They knew about the planets' orbital periods. They could do all kinds of cool stuff, and they're telling us the sun's going to blow up on December 21st, 2012. Everybody in the government believed it. They've spent most of our entire net worth as a planet building underground and off-planet facilities to survive the solar flash. So, this is a very, very incredible thing. Of course, going back to the slide once again here, what are the odds of this happening on Christmas Day 2012, just 4 days after the Mayan calendar's end date? Our closest neighbor, the star nearest to us, right next door, became 1,000 times brighter for 10 seconds on Christmas Day or thereabouts 2012. And the law of one says that the intelligent energy offers a type of clock. The cycles move as precisely as a clock strikes your hour. Thus, the gateway from intelligent energy to intelligent infinity opens regardless of circumstance on the striking of the hour. All right, so this is obviously something that has lived with me for a long time, the law of one and all this speculation. Now, what I want to do here is talk about, okay, yes, so somebody just said this on the comments. Proxima Centauri didn't explode. It didn't cease to exist. It gave off a bright flash that was 1,000 times brighter than usual for about 10 seconds, and they have said in these articles that it would create an extinction level event for the people who were there on that planet Proxima b, if anybody could have lived there. So here's the point. I identified a physics mechanism that led me to believe that this change in the amount of energy in our solar system, the heating up of our planet, this cloud that we're moving into that Dr. Merav Ofer has discovered, and remember Dr. Donald Szymanski, since 1978, NASA is threatening him if he does any research that shows that we're moving into this cloud of high magnetic energy and high temperature. But if it's hotter, then yeah, the planets are going to warm up. Yeah, your sun's going to warm up. And it would appear that one of the things the sun has to do is give off a solar flash. And so maybe it's like a bomb, you know? How does a bomb work? If you create compression, there is an amount of pressure when you cause air to suddenly be formed. In the case of an explosion, it's creating all this new air. As the oxygen is consumed, it has a atmospheric outburst. And all this new atmosphere, if you have a very tightly compressed area where there's no cracks, the pressure will cause it to explode and break into a bunch of pieces all at once. And I've never experimented with this. This is strictly anecdotal. Yeah, I've never done anything like, put a shot glass on a concrete floor and then stick a firework under it or anything like that. I've never done anything like that. No, never. Please don't do anything stupid. Do not play around with fireworks. Do not play around with glass. It's just dumb stuff, okay? Don't do dumb stuff. You don't have to do dumb stuff to figure out that, if you build a high enough pressure inside something where the pressure can't get out in any one place, it gets out in all the places at once, and it's an explosion. And that's what appears to be happening with our sun. It appears that the sun needs to explode once we get into this cloud in order to feel comfortable in this new higher energy that we've got. And again, everybody is convinced on the inside, the DCTP, that there's going to be a solar flash and that the Earth is going to be wiped out and we're in end times, an eschatological situation. There's nothing we can do about it. We're all hash browns. We're all toast. And only the people who live underground or off planet maybe will survive. And everybody believed that. And it's an ancient prophecy. And then they also have these full outs that people are going through when they go through a time portal at the end of 2012. They feel this amazing cosmic consciousness, out-of-body experience, omniscient intelligence. Then there's the problem of the interlacing frames and looking glass. The frames go faster and faster, flickering, until it goes all white at the end of 2012. Well, everybody thought the sun was going to go off at the end of 2012, and it did not. There have been other prophetic windows of catastrophic events that I was expecting that didn't happen, like in 1998. The Edgar Cayce readings, one part of the Edgar Cayce readings appeared to say that California would fall into the ocean in 1998, and they said that this would be correlated with what they called the second coming of Christ. And they never really got entirely clear on what that was, although they said that it is not what most people believe. It's not so much a savior figure showing up in one person as it is the idea that the principles that Jesus was trying to teach us now become principles that everyone starts living by, and we take that Christ path and we take his promise and we fulfill the promise by embodying the teachings. In other words, the whole point is not to say, well, Jesus did all this great stuff, so now I don't have to do the work. Jesus wants you heavy lifting. He wants you thinking about being kind, being compassionate, having forgiveness, because this is actually the intelligence of the universe. The intelligence of the universe itself, according to the law of one, is a loving energy. And with loving consciousness comes this concept of, boundaries, that the universe does create karma. If you hurt people, you're going to experience the karma. So we always thought that there was going to be a solar flash. I've lived my whole life up until this Michael prophecy thing happened. I've lived my whole life since really in college, at least, believing that we were going to be wiped out. And I never told you to have a problem about it. I said, look, you're going to, if you're ascending, you're going to be fine. You're going to turn into light body. You're going to be rescued by ETs. They'll bring you back here when everything's calmed down. Okay? It doesn't appear that that's what's happening. It doesn't appear that there are going to be any earth changes of any great significance. It does not appear that we are going to have a solar flash here. It appears that our solar flash happened on Proxima Centauri. It was diverted from our solar system because we learned enough that we actually learn more by going through the COVID situation than we do by going through Earth changes. So this is a very, very exciting and amazing new chapter in my work. And it wasn't until a few weeks ago, actually, that I compiled the Michael prophecies. So this is the last thing I want to talk about before we end. We're already at the 2.5 hour mark, and I'm going to keep it under 3 hours, I promise. So let's talk about this a little bit, because this has really changed my life. If you go back and you watch the last YouTube videos I did, actually, the ones right before this one, I'm reading from these words that I received by extensively training myself in military remote viewing. And in fact, as I'm going to do remote viewing, let me shift to another camera here, because what the heck, I can do it. So military remote viewing, I trained in this through Cosmic Voyage by Dr. Courtney Brown, who was on Art Bell in the late 1990s working with Ed Dames, who was teaching people remote viewing. And in his first book, there was more than enough evidence to piece together all of the protocols of remote viewing and how it was done. And I began practicing these protocols, and then I modified them because I had contact with Joe Mason, and he was on Richard C. Hoagland's discussion forum for enterprisemission.com. And he started telling me about something called the dream voice. And he said that if you wake up in the morning and you're just waking up and you listen to the background in your head, that you may perceive in kind of a three-dimensional space, you can kind of hear a voice talking over here, and you can kind of hear a voice talking over here. And it might not be anything more than the equivalent of like if you were in a room and there's a television on in the other room and you can kind of hear some of the words, I don't really care about that. Well, what we have to learn if you want to practice this type of remote viewing is that your conscious mind will have thoughts that come from the universe, from a higher intelligence, from your higher intelligence. And anybody can be trained for remote viewing. So Joe Mason had used a version of remote viewing, the same protocols, same basic ideas, but he was doing it with words. And so the essential protocols of remote viewing are pretty straightforward. The idea is that you don't want to analyze any of your information. That's very important. You don't analyze the data, and you don't have any emotional reactions to the data. You keep moving, you stay busy, and you document every single thing that goes through your head. You are not allowed to analyze it. You are not supposed to be paying attention to it. So in order for me to do this work, it turned out that I followed Joe Mason's technique. I listened in the morning, and I was able to hear my dream voice speaking. At first, I wrote it down in a notebook, and the very first time that I did this, it was November 10th, 1996, I had a stunning series of prophetic things happening. Prophecies of the future. In fact, they predicted that something was going to happen to Mother Teresa, and 5 days later, she had a heart attack. So this was like a very real phenomenon. This source starts giving me a certain number of words I was writing down in a notebook. I write them down every day, pretty much every day. And then it keeps predicting the future over and over again in the most amazing ways. And it's very spooky, scary stuff. Like I am at a health food store in Woodstock talking to a guy about Joseph Campbell, and he was telling me that Joseph Campbell said that religions are like software to access God, and that there is no one right way. Even the word God, you might be offended that I use that word. I don't know. But anyway, I go back home and I sit down, I put the tape in the tape recorder, I hit play. The very first thing that my voice says, talking as my higher self, is we are installing new software. And the guy had just said, Joseph Campbell says religions are like software to access God. Then this source is saying we're installing new software. Now, this source was very Christian, by the way. I mean, it's just, when you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. So if you have problems with Christianity, you're probably going to have a problem with Michael prophecies, because this is a source claiming that it's Archangel Michael. So I get all these prophecies. It's telling me that I worry too much. It's telling me that my diet was bad. I was a vegan at the time, and I was eating soy, and it said soy is terrible, so I had to stop getting off of that. Eventually, I did have, in my own personal instance, I had to get back on meat. I tried to be vegan for 7 years, and I became so anemic that I nearly died from that. So really, the training is about quieting your mind and listening to that still small voice that will appear when you're first waking up and you can barely move your body. And again, you do need to train. I mean, it's best to learn as much as possible if you want to do something like this. But I began practicing this regularly. And so it continued through, it started right at the end of 1996. And in my most recent book, Awakening in the Dream, we talk about how this contact occurred and the amazing prophecies that were happening. And when I wrote the book, Awakening the Dream, which I did here in this house, by the way, I had a time loop with the time that I first got the words in 1996, and it was absolutely amazing. I finished the book in January of 2020, right as we were seeing things on the news of people in China dropping over dead, allegedly from COVID, which we certainly never saw that again, so maybe that was propaganda. We don't really know. But that's what it looked like at the beginning was happening. So people are dropping over in China, and is it going to come to America? I don't know. But it was, they'd already called it this, and so even before the book was published, they allowed me to put a page on the back. So if you go to the very back of Awakening in the Dream, I show a prediction from my readings about this situation with the virus. And it's pretty darn astonishing. So that's on the last page of Awakening in the Dream. Now, maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, but there was some other stuff that was said in those readings that was very, very bizarre. But the time loops were undeniable, and I wrote the book, and it's incredible, and I highly recommend that you read it. About $20, and I don't really make any money off of the book. I think I get I don't want to say it out loud, but you could not live on the money that I've made for all of the books that I've written together. If all I had was those checks, I'd have to rent a studio apartment, probably. Literally. So it's sad that the arts have been demonetized and that you can't really make money doing a lot of things, sculpture, dance, ballet, jazz, blues, rock, you name it. It's just very difficult to do any type of art now and make money on it. I am looking at the possibility of taking on some sponsors. You'll notice I've never had sponsors in the whole history of my work. There are certain sponsors that I'm looking at possibly affiliating with, and so I may do that. But anyway, to get back to the point, 2012, right? So there was supposed to be a solar flash. The prophecies expected it, and then nothing happened, but only as of February 2018, I guess, or even October. February 2018 is when that data came out, as I was just showing you, that there was a solar flash next door. Now, another big piece of this is the research of the Soviet scientist Dr. Nikolai Kozyrev, who was studying binary stars for many years. This is where two or more stars are very close together. And what he noticed was the stars might be 20 light years apart, let's say, or 8 light years apart. But then he would notice that their brightness fluctuations would occur simultaneously between the two stars. No speed of light differential. So if it was electromagnetic, and this star over here is fluctuating, but then this one is 8 light years away, the information of it fluctuating here should take 8 years to come over here. So how in the hell are both of the stars doing this at the same time, right? All these little fluctuations, it doesn't make any sense except to say that there is some sort of energetic interchange that they are sharing that is not based on time. It happens instantaneously. It's always there. And if I'd had more time to prepare today, I would have wanted to give you some of these Kozyrev studies, but I'll circle back to that later on. But in the meantime, right for now, there is plenty of Kozyrev research out there. We could dig it up, and we will, so we'll come back to this, showing that stars fluctuate at the same time. So the solar flash that was supposed to happen on December 21st, 2012, folks, it didn't get delayed. It didn't get moved ahead. It didn't happen, and it's not going to happen. It happened on Proxima Centauri to fool the banker bastards into building us these cool cities and exposing themselves because they thought the world was going to be destroyed anyway. Turns out that it's not. Now, how do I know this? Why am I so confident? I sound like a total freaking idiot. The stuff I'm saying. David, you are out of your mind. There's not going to be a solar flash. How do you possibly know this? Well, okay. If you go back to the preceding videos that I did on this channel, David Wilcock 333, and here's my little silver medal award right up there. They actually sent me one of those back when they still did that. And please, by the way, I'm about to hit 500,000, so please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so. I think we're at 483, so we literally only need 17,000 more subs. and we'll be at 500,000. I think we can hit it, and why the heck not? I mean, this is the only utility I'm aware of where I can do something like this, where I could do a global peace meditation and not have to pay for it. I mean, I think I could do it on Rumble, but I think I have to pay for the bandwidth. And maybe they'll change that in the future, and maybe it'll be worth it for me to pay for the bandwidth in the future. I don't know. This is a great technology that we have to be able to talk to you and stream out like this, and I'm so grateful. I mean, living for a year in Burbank, I went to all these Hollywood stores and I learned the equipment that I needed to buy to be able to make this set look this good, and have the right lenses and the right lights and everything. And then learning all the eccentricities of this gear, which is very, very, very difficult to run. Very, very difficult. So, everybody's been planning on the solar flash happening here. They wanted to hide out underground, and they've got a whole network. Phil Schneider goes into this, hundreds of underground cities connected by bullet trains called the subshuttle system. And it turns out they didn't need it. So how do I know this? The most recent videos that I went into were quotations from my readings in the year 1999, because I continued doing this practice, listening to it, dictating into a tape recorder, transcribing it again. You can't listen to it when you transcribe it either. That's a big mistake. If you acclimate yourself to understanding what your voice is saying as it's talking, it won't work. So I would meditate when I was doing the reading, and then I would meditate again when I was transcribing the reading, and I wouldn't listen to it while I was transcribing it. So the only time I would actually read it was after I finished transcribing it. Then I would pay attention to the words, then I would pay attention to what they meant, and then I uploaded it to my website. So this is another very critical point, folks. You can go to archive.org. You can go to the original website address I had, because I thought this was all going to culminate in 2000. I called it ascension2000.com. Now it just sounds like some vacuum cleaner. But at the time, I thought that was a clever name. I thought, well, there was some prophecies about 1998. Then there was the Nostradamus prophecy. In the year 1999 and 7 months, from the sky will come the great king of terror. Holy shit, that sounds like a nuclear war. In 1999, and it's right there in Nostradamus. So I was all freaked out about that. I was freaked out about the 1998 thing. I was freaked out about Y2K, the millennium bug, the idea that the computers only had 2 digits to tell you what year it was, and they're going to think it's 1900, not 2000. Art Bell, to his credit, gave us an incredible amount of public awareness about this, and he is probably the reason why our economy didn't fall apart at that time. Y2K was prevented by people having appropriate paranoia and saving us from the end of the world. But at the time that I was doing these readings in 1999, I was listening to Art Bell, and he was talking about the end of the world, so I was thinking about it all the time. I was thinking about the loss of food. I was thinking about the possibility of the loss of electricity. I was thinking about all of these kinds of very, very frightening millennium scenarios. And I'm pulling in all these readings, and they're describing stuff that sounds like pretty scary things are going to be happening on the earth. And I noticed that they said that the military-industrial complex would be exposed. And they actually predicted in these readings a positive transformation where the evil that's on earth is going to be revealed much more dramatically than any of us are expecting, that they will be fully exposed, that everybody on earth will know what they did, and that they will face justice. And I, again, have advised for not using death penalty as much as possible, not using capital punishment. I think imprisonment gives people time to reflect on what they've done and how much better the world is going to be once they're not screwing with us anymore, frankly. And the technology that they wouldn't let us have is able to be released. I mean, that's a better situation than what we got now. And you can't bring us into a green economy if we don't have the technology to support it. We can't do solar panels. This has been proven. We still need fuel. We need liquid natural gas. We need oil. We need gas. I mean, these are things that we can't get rid of yet. And it's become a very, very poignant point in the struggle that's going on with Russia. So when I was going through my work late last year, this was in September, I realized, okay, I'm working on this company now. I've got this aerospace company, and I am in the process of hopefully getting it financed well enough that we can make hover cars and power plants, among other things. Change the world bring in this whole new layer of technology. And I actually even went so far as to create an online paid program called The Disclosure, where the CEO of our company, who has worked directly on these technologies before, so he claims, is coming out and telling us how it works. And the disclosure was a success. It was a great success. So we are not going to stay the way we are very much longer. We are about to experience a quantum leap, which is exactly what these ancient prophecies told us would happen at the end of the 25,000-year cycle. We go into a golden age. We become a golden race. This is a very tangible, practical thing that they were telling us to expect. And that golden race apparently includes abilities like Jesus. Most Christians aren't ready to take the high-octane John 14:12 quote where it says, Jesus said, "As I do these things," meaning his miracles, "so shall you do them, and greater things, for I go unto my Father, Mother, God." As I do these miracles, so will you do them, and greater miracles. So again, the way I expected this was going to happen is that there's a pole shift of some kind, super volcanoes going off, solar flash, 1,000 degrees Celsius burn on the surface of the earth. I was told by insiders that they don't expect any life on earth to live because it all gets cooked. But ETs are going to rescue you, and wherever you need to go, they're going to take you there. So if you're a real big jerk, you get to stay on Earth and experience Mad Max. And if you're not a real big jerk, then you get moved away and brought back when the Earth calms down and all the ash is settled and everything from the volcanoes. So it's a lot. It's a lot to process, and the fact that this was taken so seriously on a governmental level that they spent the majority of all of our wealth on preparing for this event. So now I'm in the process of working on this company, which if the Earth is going to be okay, that's great because now we're building hover cars. It's sort of like what my great-grandfather did with the New York City subway and how that's going to change business and stimulate changes in society that we can't even imagine. Colonization of all these different regions. I mean, overpopulation, we don't have overpopulation, for God's sake. If you give the people the technology of free energy and hover cars, they're going to migrate. They're going to want to go be hippies, and they're going to want to caravan, and they're going to want to hang out in the Bering Strait or in the middle of Peru or wherever the heck they go where nobody else is around and they got their own private space. Now, I'm certain that there's going to be restricted zones that are the result of people having privacy and not wanting you to show up at their front door, or that there's nature preserve areas and stuff like that. So I don't think that if you have a hover car that you're going to literally be able to go anywhere on Earth that you want. You can't invade people's privacy, you know. However, it's probably going to open up. There will probably be some sort of, not like the negative one, but I think can we get rid of passports, please? Can we just frickin' get rid of them? Do we really need it? I don't know. I mean, this is all stuff we're going to have to decide, but if you have a vehicle that could allow you to travel through several countries in one day, do you need a passport? And how would that passport look? And would it be digitized? And would it just basically be like marking where you're going as you travel? These are answers that we don't have questions for yet, but the technology is real. It does exist. The Navy has declassified the patents, and those patents appear to have been derivatives of the Kenneth Shoulders propulsion system that the CEO of my company, Chris, actually developed. So he talks about this in our show, that he financed it, that it was paid for by the secret government project, and that they achieved anti-gravity. And so if you believe him, he's already done it, and he's already worked on it, and now we want to declassify this and get it out to the mainstream. So that golden age sounds awesome, but going through a catastrophe doesn't. It sounds pretty terrible, obviously. Even if you get to have ETs rescue you, the freaking Earth has been destroyed. I mean, what's happening in Ukraine is unbelievable, but imagine the whole entire Earth just being consumed in a ball of fire. And that's basically what the prophecy appears to be telling us is going to happen. Okay, so in September, as I was putting the disclosure together, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I had this memory. And I remembered that somewhere in the transcripts, and it actually turned out to be in like December 1999, I had a dream in which I was told that I was the father of anti-gravity. And at the time, it was so nonsensical that I didn't even write that dream down. It was only that I had written down 2 other times in January and February of 2000 that I had a dream that I was the father of anti-gravity, that I even have any documentation about it. But I do have that documentation. And again, everything I was doing, I was uploading it onto the internet. So all of the readings I did in 1999, or almost all of them, are actually online, and you can go look them up. So then I see this thing about father of anti-gravity. And I'm thinking about that dream, and I'm like, wow, now I'm doing this aerospace company, and we're actually making that dream a reality. And I remember when they told me this and it didn't make any sense, and I started researching anti-gravity because I said, well, if there's any truth to this in the future, I at least ought to have some knowledge about anti-gravity. So that's when I started studying it. So now I go back and I am doing this anti-gravity project. Whether it works or not, I don't know yet. I'm taking a leap of faith. I'm spending my money on a highly speculative investment, of course. But why not? I mean, I'd rather do that than just buy some huge house with all this space that I don't need. I mean, as it turns out, just heating 3,600 square feet here, I blew out my huge 500-gallon propane tank in 1 month. My next door neighbor says we have had one of the harshest winters ever up here. My snow, I was completely buried in the snow. I could not live stream. I had almost no internet access. Personal hotspot capped at 40 gigabytes a month, and they shame you to death for every penny of bandwidth that you start using over 40 gigabytes. They're sending you emails like there's an emergency going on. Oh my God, you're at 76 gigabytes. Holy crap. It just drove me crazy. So thank God I got my internet back. And thank God I'm able to get this peace meditation out. And I didn't want to make it more than 3 hours, which means I only got 10 minutes left if I was going to keep to that. So now we got to really start zipping this thing up. So let me change cameras again. All right. This one, actually. No. There we go. So suffice it to say, I'm going to have to share more with you guys about this than just in this one work. But I went through those readings from 1999 right where it said father of anti-gravity, and then something very bizarre started to happen, which is that the time loop occurs. There was references in there to the fact that I was going through a divorce. I haven't published some of those, but some of them you can see. Everything that's going on in my life right now is in there, and everything that's going on in the world is in there. Biden is in there. Harris is in there. What happened in Afghanistan, that's in there. The Brazilian truck protest that now has led to other truck protests, that's in there. COVID is in there very extensively. The V's are in there very extensively. Injections. I mean, so at the time that I did these videos, they were telling us the negative is going to be defeated. COVID's going to stop. It's all going to go away. And this was in like October that I was telling you this, and it didn't seem possible that I mean, I was so afraid of like quarantine camps and getting locked down and being forced to take something that might harm my health and all this kind of stuff. I was in an incredible panic. I've been prepping for months and months and months. I have so many pepper supplies. I could basically live here for no money pretty much forever at this point, I think. So literally, if I didn't mind, hunting, but that's technically illegal, so you wouldn't do that unless it was a very, very serious situation. At least around here, it's illegal. But in an environment like that, I don't know if anybody's going to be too worried about finding you for, finding some game on your land or something. But anyway, these prophecies that I came out with in October, they were very confident. They were very bold. They said, don't worry about it. It's all going to be fine. And the more of you who believe this, the faster it's going to turn around. Well, look at what's happened, folks. I think historically that the Rogan-Malone interview is going to go down as the critical tipping point where an avuncular father figure comes forward and basically tells everybody they're under mass hypnosis and makes it okay to believe that, yes, your government is lying to you and the whole world is a big frickin' mind job set up to harm you. Well, that's where everybody's processing, and that's why there's just millions and millions and millions and millions of people out on the streets all over the world right now. And everything has been stopped. Mandates and all the stuff that they wanted to run with for years and years and years and years. So this is a victory. It's a very huge victory, and we've already done most of the work. Now, of course, what would the usual suspects want to do? If they can't control you by this method, they got to switch it to something else. And so there was all this hype in the media about Ukraine's going to be invaded, Ukraine's going to be invaded. And I didn't believe it either. Putin pulled off one of the most amazing geostrategic chess moves in history by literally, as a chess grandmaster, nobody else could do it, bluffed the whole world into thinking he was never going to do this invasion. But here's the problem. You can only do that once. You can only do that once. And so what we have actually seen already is that World War III is not happening. Other countries are not willing to participate. They are not willing to send in their troops because they know that it's going to escalate, and we have an asymmetric global warfare situation right now in which Russia has missiles, Stinger missiles, that give a decisive advantage. They have such tactical advantages that there really is no deterrence. I've been reading articles recently that said that Russia could basically invade any country in Europe they want. It's scary as hell, because if Russia is evil, then we are really screwed, or at least Europe is really screwed. But what we're actually seeing is a very large amount of content from our mainstream media here that may or may not be exactly what's going on. And then there's certain pieces of data that the mainstream media is omitting. And again, these pieces of data are either true or not. Do I know that they're true? Not absolutely, but there's a lot of people out there putting pieces together, looking at the possibility that there might be certain facilities that Putin is going after, biological in nature. This has been extensively discussed. I don't think that it's as simple as Russian propaganda. There's probably something to it, because we're finding now people looking it up and saying, yeah, well, Ukraine might not even know about it, but there might be some really bad stuff going on in their country. And so again, we have friends in Vinnytsia. I have a friend whose wife is about to give birth. He's trying to escape. It's terribly heartbreaking. I am not celebrating what's going on at all. There are lots of atrocities. I've gotten plenty of information about this firsthand. A lot of the Russian troops don't want to do it either. They're driving around in circles around a little village, and then they walk back home and say they ran out of gas. A lot of the people who are getting thrown into this from Russia apparently don't have any training. There's a whole contingent of them that are just getting drafted and thrown in there. So there's a lot of strong opinions about what may or may not be going on there, but the point is it's not escalating, and it is contained, and it's probably not going to last a whole lot longer. If Zelensky were to ask me personally, which he's not, for my advice, based on my study of history, this is what I would say. Take the advice from our own President Donald Trump and surrender, because that's what he did in the election. He didn't fight. He didn't keep it going because he knew that the DS had leverage on him. This is stuff that we've seen extensively. There was very, very nasty technology that could have created huge catastrophe for everyone. So if he had tried to do anything about the stealing of the election, we would have all been toast. We had to go through a process where it was allowed to happen. And something like, if you look at this phrase I'm about to say, take the first letter and the last word and stick them together. Darwin's theory of evolution. Evolution, okay? You got it? That's what it's called, and we know a lot about this, and I've been told by my own high-level insiders that this is real and it is happening. Now, I have been reporting on the idea that there might be some kind of an alliance working to defeat the powers that were pretty much my whole career, and I'm now at like 3 hours, so I don't really have a whole lot more time to talk here. But suffice it to say that I do believe that we are going to see more hostility before it ends. There's so much insider telegraphing that something is going to happen in Taiwan. We're already seeing the cyber strike, which predated the Russian ground assault in Ukraine. So they're already having a cyber assault in Taiwan. I've seen data saying there might be as many as 40 labs there, okay? And so we don't know what the heck is going on here. I don't think you should be too upset. I mean, it is terribly upsetting, but I don't think you should think it's the end of the world if this starts happening in Taiwan. But when China turns down Biden and actually takes his intel and hands it off to Russia, this bodes very, very badly for the U.S. And nobody is getting in Putin's way right now. And that's very, very terrifying for the Ukrainians. It's very upsetting. So my advice to Zelensky would be this. If somebody forces you to sign a contract under force, threat, or coercion, that's called signing under duress. And if you sign under duress, you can then use your political power, which is the sympathy you have from the people, to renegotiate the agreement. You sign the terrible deal, you sign the terrible contract, you accept what appears to be a surrender. There's all these clauses in there. You say, there's no freaking way we can accept this. They say we're never going to be allowed to have weapons. Well, that means we can't defend ourselves. What I would recommend is the surrendering in a physical war might be the first 20% of the war. There's a phrase called lose the battle, win the war. Okay? Look at what happened with Joan of Arc. She lost the battle. People wanted to believe she was touched by God, but she died on the stake, burned alive. That martyrdom caused the people to be inspired and to uprise in her support and then actually throw off tyranny. So right now, Ukraine has excellent, excellent positioning. It has the equivalent of multi-billion dollars of marketing that has been spent in money that you look at it as marketing money to make people feel sympathy for Ukraine. But what people obviously don't feel sympathy for, based on how the narrative is unfolded, is they don't feel sympathy for World War III or nuclear war. And so given the fact that the Russian army outnumbers Ukraine greatly, there's really only two choices. If Putin doesn't stop being aggressive, he's either going to get them by sheer numbers, or it's just going to last forever. It's just going to be this prolonged thing like Afghanistan, in which case nobody wants to live in Ukraine. The civilians are constantly dying. So here's the trick, and there's a lot of evidence in history to support this. If Zelensky signs what appears to be a shitty deal, he's got billions of dollars worth of marketing and the will of the people, who will then go back and say, no, we don't like this deal. So just because you sign a contract doesn't mean that it's going to stick if you signed it under duress, which means that you had to sign it because you were forced to under threat of death. So in light of this, as a practical solution to try to get us through this right now, I would say sign the deal so that people stop dying, because once the deaths stop, the firing of weapons stops, all the hostilities stop, at this point, you now have bought yourself some time. Oh my God, I can't believe we signed this horrible contract. How could we have signed this contract? Renegotiate. You know what? The changes that are going to happen in the world, if we are right, and I totally believe we are, and the Michael prophecies are saying this, these bad guys are going to be defeated. So Putin has basically destroyed all of his political credibility by what he's done here. And so there better be a good reason for it that we find out pretty soon, or else none of this makes any sense at all. And so if he comes out with his reason, and if we find out this reason publicly, then again, in the aftermath of that reason, it may be very well that Ukraine is allowed to have weapons. It may be that there are border regions where Ukraine it has a demilitarized zone. There's a DMZ on the border with Russia, okay, and then maybe there they don't have weapons. But for Ukraine to be completely defenseless and even maybe to lose its statehood, this doesn't seem practical. But again, you can't fight your way out of this. Fighting is only 20% of the war. The 80% happens after you've allegedly surrendered. And then you start dealing with contracts. And who knows this better than anybody? The Illuminati. They are the ultimate masters of lose the battle, win the war. It doesn't even matter if you lose a war. They don't care. They pay for both sides of the war. They finance both of them. Either way, whoever wins, they're on that side. So if they lose a war, that's just the beginning. They haven't even started, okay? Once they lose the war, once they sign the crappy contract, they're just getting warmed up. They're just rubbing their hands together and going, oh, now we're going to do this, and now we're going to do that, and now we're going to do this, and now we're going to do that. So look, Trump didn't do anything else. He surrendered, okay? And that's wisdom. There's wisdom in going back and saying, well, wait a minute, this is screwed up. And so now people are looking at the election going, yeah, it is kind of screwed up here. Oh, and I see I got 2,000 more MXs. Thank you again, Rabbi, or whoever that is. Thank you for the 2,000, whatever I got. I got $300. Wow, this is awesome. So All right, we're getting towards the end here, but I did want to give this message to Ukraine that please take a lesson from the Illuminati and remember that once you've surrendered and signed the terrible contract, you're only just getting started. And at that point, there's so many things you can do. Contracts under duress are invalidated. It's a breach of contract because the contract itself was created through threat and coercion. So just sign the darn thing, and we will rally as a world and make sure that Ukraine is going to be able to stay alive, because that's the point. We want you guys to stay alive, but we don't want you to drag us into a nuclear war either. So it doesn't look like fighting him off is going to win the war. The only way to do this now is with the creativity that the deep state would think of, right? Which is, we can't win this militarily, so we sign the thing and then we get them some other way, right? And the other way, they got a lot of clever stuff here. But again, if you got billions of dollars worth of marketing and there's a high degree of sympathy for the Ukrainian people and everybody in the world is just shocked and horrified by what has happened, you better believe the contract's under duress and we'll get you a renegotiation, okay? So that's my advice on a practical level as to how we might be able to solve this thing. But also, then we have the technology of mass meditation. So mass meditation technology brings us to this workable system where we're manipulating, for a positive purpose, the collective consciousness. And so before we do the mass meditation, I want to share with you that it ultimately turned out that these time-looped prophecies from 1999 that extend into the present, they exist in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. The whole entire year 1999 is chock full of readings that are directly prophetic of what's happening right now in our world. And this is why I am so confident that we are not heading into nuclear war. That's not in there. We are not heading into World War III. That's not in there. We are not heading into some large-scale earth change or solar flash. That's not in there. In fact, this is the big message I wanted to give you guys, and I'm sorry that it's already taken me 3 hours to get to this point. But I'm going to try to keep it as quick as I can here because I don't want to go on much longer. Oh, Nurse Lois 22 gave me $100. Paolo Avila gave me $50. Thank you so much, you guys. That is awesome. Sorry if I'm not always looking over here, but sometimes I see something rude and it just throws off the whole train of thought. You know, it's like, yeah, okay, I got crazy hair, whatever. You know, it's mountain hair. It's Yeti hair. I'm up in the mountains. I get to do what I want. This is what my hair does if I don't try to comb it and blow dry out all these curls that I get. What the heck, you know? At least I don't look like Mark Zuckerberg with the freaking crazy face. Now that would have been too much. That global peace meditation with that face, I don't think would have gotten the results that we're looking for. So, look, all of these readings go back to 1999. They all apparently were written by Archangel Michael. I practiced this technology of remote viewing. I did it repeatedly, and I uploaded it to the internet. And unbeknownst to me, it was used to write a book for the present. So it's 478 pages long, single-spaced. I mean, it is massive. But every time that there's a passage that looks like it's predicting the future, I highlighted it in red. Up until now, we've had this available just for the participants of the disclosure, and they are still going to get that. But I also now have realized that this book is so incredible that I have to release it on a general level. Now, the higher forces have instructed me to charge for it. This is something that took an incredible amount of time of actually bringing it in, recording it on tape, dictating it, transcribing it, learning how to do the website, uploading it to the website. It's an incredible amount of work that's gone into writing this book. But the whole book talks about the present. And so I do hope that when the time comes that you will step up and help me with this. The price point is somewhere around $100. It'll probably be less than that. I'm going to try to keep it as inexpensive as possible, but it's going to include the book itself in at least a virtual PDF form. It'll be password protected. It's going to include the audio version, which may be 25 hours. I've got all these panels that you're seeing over here on the wall. Part of the reason why I've got them, where would it be? Yeah, so like these panels right here, I had to deaden out the space and really try to reduce my echo because I'm going to be doing an audio recording and you want no echo in your voice at all. So anyway, where was I? So where we are right now is that the Michael prophecies have predicted the future with stunning accuracy. They told us this COVID thing was going to go away. It already has. They actually have a really funny attack against Joe Rogan in there one place. They call him Mighty Joe Young in reference to this racist comment that he made that was widely touted by the media. There's so many things in there that are stunning. But the bottom line, when you read the book, is that it tells us that the earth changes will not be necessary, that this whole thing with vaccines and COVID and the exposure of the elite, that it is the equivalent of the earth changes and that it negates the need for the earth changes. There is not going to be a solar flash. There is not going to be a pole shift. Why? Because it got diverted to Proxima Centauri. The explosion happened simultaneously on December 21st, 2012, but it didn't happen here. It happened next door. And what Michael is saying is that we are now on the ascension timeline. So congratulations, if you are still alive, if you are watching this and you are still alive, if you're not watching this from the afterlife, you are now participating in what they call the ascension. This whole process of the mass global awakening, the understanding of tyranny, the understanding of entrenched corporate dictatorships, and the control of finances to limit freedom. I mean, all of this stuff is coming out now. And we apparently have graduated from the need for the catastrophe, which again, nobody in the secret government is going to want to believe this. And I think that it would take beings from the future writing this book in 1999 and then having so many time loops to the present. There's hundreds of them, literally hundreds of them. So yeah, when you read it, you're going to have a lot of fun, and it's going to be amazing, and probably most people are going to want to listen to it. So I'm getting really close now to having this product ready to go. Hopefully we'll have it ready within a couple weeks, because I mean the Taiwan thing is probably going to happen before I can get it out. But we are looking at a big transitional jump that's going to happen in the immediate term here, which probably is going to lead to some kind of trials where people are being publicly accused of things in courts and being found guilty. And it's going to be much, much bigger than we thought. And then afterwards is where we get a huge burst of prosperity. All this stolen money is released, and all this suppressed technology is released. So yes, right now it's tragic. It's terrifying what's happening in Ukraine. If it happens in Taiwan, it's going to be just as traumatic. It's going to be just as terrifying. It's going to make us think this is the end of the world. That's not what the book says, folks. The book says we're going to be fine. The book says these people are going to be arrested. And the book says that as a result of us doing this, that we don't need to all die off. And again, I don't believe that everybody who took one of these injections is going to die either, because I talked about pyramid technology and all this amazing stuff that we have. So even if this thing has literally liquefied your organs, we may be able to play some laser light into your organs and regrow them, just like we did in the rat with the pancreas. And if it's good enough for a rat, why isn't it good enough for you? All right, well, let's go ahead and let's get this. Yenis said, did you lose weight? You were on fire. Right on. So thank you. I did lose weight. I'm actually in the best shape of my entire life. My body looks amazing. I even thought about, if I wanted to choose other ways to market the David Wilcock brand, I certainly could do it with muscles as well right now. But that's awesome. I mean, I'm up here at 8,600 feet, shoveling snow constantly, eating an incredibly clean diet. I discovered that sauteed onions, which Michael was telling me to eat sauteed onions, and then I hear the Mike I was talking about before on the air saying that that's one of the best natural sources for quercetin. And quercetin is this substance that allows you to uptake zinc properly, which then prevents you from getting sick. So Michael had already guided me to eat a quarter of a sauteed onion with every meal, because I have breakfast, which is eggs and sausage, and then dinner I have a protein meal. So in both of those cases, I'm having a quarter of a sauteed onion, and you saute it enough to get the terpenes, so it tastes really nice. So that's a great natural remedy, costs almost nothing to help keep you safe. But in the meantime, this technology of mass meditation is really what I want to use, and it turns out right now we have 7,371 concurrent viewers, which is 371 more than we need for the meditation effect, because it takes 7,000 people. All right, so without further ado, let's see if we can make something good happen for planet Earth here. I'd like you to put both feet flat on the floor. Close your eyes. Take a nice deep breath. And just let it all go. And as you relax and meditate on the many interesting topics that we've discussed today, perhaps it's time to let yourself feel the loving energy of the universe for what it really is. Loving energy is the author of all existence. No matter how dark the road may seem, no matter how impossible the odds, there is always a ray of light that shines through that consumptive darkness, providing a tangible path to an acceptable victory solution. And without taking personal inventory of how we have lied to ourselves and not been honest and not been truthful about who we are and what we're really doing here, that is the extent to which we have not lived up to our full potential. Recognize that you are a creator being with incredible ability. Your mind sculpts reality with each and every thought. And as we paint the reality that we wish to see in the world, we do so with an aura of love and expectancy. We are incredibly grateful to have received a message indicating that earth changes will not be necessary, that we get to continue to live our lives here on earth, that this bizarre global initiation we've been through is the fulfillment of the 25,000-year cycle. It is the fulfillment of the eschatological prophecies of the end times. It is the fulfillment of the movement of the earth in the prophecies, except that it's happening through the movement of people, through the movement of politics, through the movement of ideas, and through the progress of civilization itself. As we become ennobled and embodied and stand up and replace tyranny with acceptance, replace judgment with humility, and replace violence with understanding, we become capable of co-creating the world that we would wish to live in, no longer being ruled by violent psychopaths who use lies, trickery, deception, and deceit to fulfill their goals, where the only thing they can truly strive for is to reduce life as much as possible, since they themselves dislike being alive. They themselves don't quite get the whole point of what this is all about. They don't really like being here. They don't really like organic life in general. And so in the most extreme cases of people on the psychopath spectrum, they feel compelled to punish and to destroy organic life because they hate life. They hate being alive. And therefore, the only thing they can do is to try to seek revenge. We have had enough of people seeking power on earth so that they can enact revenge against life itself. Life is not something that needs to be avenged. Life is not something that needs to be destroyed, tortured, mutilated, and punished. Life can be growing on this earth. We have plenty of room for everyone, especially as these technologies come out that will give us easy to produce food, irrigation, travel to any part of the world we need to go. We can colonize all kinds of areas that were inaccessible to us up until now. And we have apparently been through most of the war that was necessary to defeat these elite negative folks on earth. They themselves are having an awakening. They themselves are realizing that their plan is not what they thought it was, and that they have reached a point of no return where they also have to adapt and move with the current that the earth is taking us in, or else they too will not be able to be here anymore. Let us take this energy that we have raised and send soothing, calming, healing peace to the people of Ukraine and to the soldiers fighting on the opposite side. Take this loving consciousness that you are feeling right now and imagine these people not picking up their guns, not wanting to fight, not wanting to create violence, not wanting to kill. But imagine this whole planet moving away from violence, away from perpetual fear, perpetual anger, perpetual sadness, and moving into a world that fulfills the promise that we were given in so many ancient teachings, that we will become that which we seek in the spiritual sense. Our thirst will be slaked. The Christ consciousness is awakening in human beings. Jesus was an example that we were meant to follow and to maybe even try to improve upon in our own humble way. For he said, "As I do these things, so shall ye do them, and greater things, for I go unto my Father, Mother, God." And so it is. We do eagerly await that time that you shall approach the throne of the divine and sign your name upon the skein of everlasting space and time known as the Akashic Records, thus freeing yourself from the obligation to this third density and opening up your fourth density adventure. We are just getting started, and the Michael prophecies have indicated that the earth will change much more rapidly once we move past the trials than any of the changes that we have seen up until now for centuries. It's very exciting. It's happening now. History is being rewritten. The hippie movement, Woodstock, 1969, I actually think it worked. I think that they achieved the goal, which is give peace a chance. We are here now, and we want to do this, and by affirming our covenant with the divine, we therefore authorize this healing to take place. We authorize hostilities on earth to be stopped, and we authorize the moving forward of this revelation of the information that all of us need to know to save this planet. And so it is. Amen. All right. So I think we're good here. I hope that you have enjoyed this. I'm going to be coming back at you more often now that I've got my internet back and there's a crazy situation going on in the world. There's a lot more to talk about, folks. But also, please, if you do feel compelled to purchase the Michael Prophecies when I can get it released, there is a critical need for funds right now because, frankly, I have a massive tax bill from last year that I need to pay. So once again, I'm in this boat, but at the same time, Stavati is doing great. We've got money coming in. Looks like it's going to be happening. I don't know quite how soon, but hopefully within the month of March. And there's a lot more to show. We're going to start 3D printing prototypes of our hover cars. So I'll probably have a toy for you the next time I'm on the air. And there's a lot of really cool stuff to look forward to. I am not worried about what's going on. I encourage you to be as confident and relaxed as possible. And I will see you on the next show. I am David Wilcock. Thank you for watching. At some point it has to end. And did you notice that I set this to 17 here? It's exactly 17. All right, folks, that's all I